Welcome to Picks with the Professional Sports Betting Show, hosted by a real statistics professor. This is the college basketball tournament edition for 2025. We're actually going to do this in two parts, mainly because I think we're going to go about 2 hours on this. 2 hours is a long time. So we're going to do this in like a part one and the part two, about an hour each. First part, we're going to cover every first round game. And then in part two, we'll cover the rest of the tournament. So this actually could work really well for you too, viewer. So hang in there with me. If you're using just our information for sports betting, then we will cover projections for all of these first games. So this first episode will be a great resource for you because you're actually going to get all the projections for free. Now, the downside is, of course, you're going to have to write them down once you're with us in Dub Club. If you're with us in Dub Club, you already have all these projections. I encourage you right now, go to that file. If you're a printing, Jake, are you a print kind of person? I don't know. I just something old school. It's the gambling thing. I like to get my papers out and the sports book, the smoke around, it feels like
I feel like I'm one of those horse betting people, and
yeah. I want
those
to feel
guys
like I'm in the
look like they really enjoy their life, and not my style.
Dude, I want to feel like I'm in the 60s, like maybe the mob boss is coming over. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, you want to print it, you don't want whatever, but you've already got all this stuff. So you can follow along really nicely. After we get through the first little slides here, I'll show the bracket. So if you're like for the bracket, we'll see it. So I think we're going to try to give you everything you need here. First episode, first round, then we'll cover everything else. So for those of you looking to do a bracket challenge or kind of curious as our thoughts overall, we'll dive a little deeper into the teams as we get going. Early on, it's going to be just kind of a lot of projections. A lot of these, we kind of know who's going to win. So we'll kind of try to give you the info, move on the bracket, but the next one will be a lot more fun about the bracket. Also, this is a whole new setup for us here. We've had some issues with our previous software not capturing our audio. And so we're like, look, we're not going to record 2 hours of content here and then it not have our audio. That would be insanely frustrating.
Unless you're really good at lip reading, it's not going to do you any good.
Yes. Yeah, the lip reading. And at some point, I think Mrs. Professor had even mentioned something about that. Like, should we try lip reading software? And could they figure out? I was like, I don't know if it's that good yet. I think the software that's good is at least capturing the voices. So anyway, so it's a little bit different here. But just some more quick reminders. We're only going to do the official projection slide that you're used to seeing for one game. So just some reminders about the model. It's a player-based model. That really matters this time of year, especially with injuries, things of that nature. Unfortunately, we've already seen one with Iowa State losing one of their key players. Yeah, we talked about last week. So, obviously we never hope for injuries, but we do have to account for them. And so this model does that. Now, as we mentioned with Cousin Jared, and so folks, many of you don't know this, Cousin Jared and I did a show on Friday night, a 30-minute show. And it was one winner, one loser. So you didn't miss much there, but we had a lot of educational talk and a lot of good discussion. I think one of the things we talked about there, specifically with injuries, was just you never know how schemes can change with injuries too. Maybe that was you and I, Jake. I don't remember where we talked about this. So that's the thing you kind of have to just keep in mind with injuries. But again, we're doing our best to account for that. The average gets 100 higher, implies more points. You're going to see some really good teams. We're going to start off with some really bad teams, though, so it should be a lot of fun. But you know what? It doesn't really matter if it's NIT, CBI, LMNO, whatever. It doesn't matter. We can still make money all the same as long as we're betting good prices and numbers. And that's what we've said here for the entirety of our existence. And so we want to just kind of make sure that we are doing that. If you are interested in getting all of these projections, all of the picks for football, hockey, baseball, we're just coming off of a 7 straight winning hockey days. We won literally every day last week, almost 20 units. And so that's, baseball starting up. A lot of reasons to join. The link in the show description will get you half off your first month, all new low price. We really want to get you in here, especially here towards the end of the month here of March with so much happening. So check that out. Other multiple handicappers. We're bringing a few more on board here. Right now, we've only got a few. Jake, we've been giving out some picks over there. We've had our very own sports betting chick who's been one of the OGs. You've seen her in the comments from ever since the start. If you've been around here at any time, she's been here with us from the start. She's been dropping her college basketball picks, hitting at some 65% rate over like 200, 300 picks. It's ungodly what's happening. She's really seeing college basketball well. You get her picks over there. We got a soccer guy who's been doing fantastic. I didn't know this today. I'm calling him Soccer Rob because he's a soccer guy. We'll have to change his nickname because he's been giving all these soccer winners over on Discord. Lo and behold, he tells me he does other sports too. I'm like, oh my gosh. So we got other great handicappers over there as well. So a lot of good benefits. A Discord chat. We have a lot of fun. Check that out. But we will get to it here. We're going to start off Tuesday night, first for Dayton, Ohio, with St. Francis, PA, and Alabama State. Folks, this game is going to be terrible. I feel like at some point we don't even want to talk about these games. You can make money on it. You can bet on it. That's what really matters. So it's really just all about the projection, how you see it, etc. But again, just kind of showing you what the model's saying here, just to frame us, right? The model is not necessarily going to always be right. Unfortunately, it's not going. Alabama State probably won't win by exactly 3, right? So it's not that we say it's going to be perfect, but it gives us kind of a north star for us here. We've got Alabama State as the better team here, right? 268 versus 306. Again, we're going to quickly get into much better teams, but these first 4 games, they start early. I've been to it once. It was a lot of fun. It's dark and it's like kind of dead in there for a while. It's a lot of fun to go to, but it is kind of weird. Jake, thankfully for the purposes of our bracket, we do not have to pick this game. Um, I'm assuming there's gonna be a lot of games where you're like, I have nothing to say. I feel like this has got to be one of them. Unless you do, at which point, if you do, I would love to hear anything you have to say about any of these teams, other than we know the states they're located in because they're in their name. Otherwise, I got nothing.
Like St. Francis went on a hot streak. They were terrible, did not do well in conference. Hot streak in the tournament to get here. Congratulations. I agree with them. I don't think Alabama State's a better team, but if I don't have the ability to deep dive on these two teams because it's not going to matter more than this game.
And that's kind of, I think, how this first episode's going to go. It's going to be a lot of, I'm going to give out the projections, some information, so that hopefully y'all, if you're sports betting, you can utilize that information to your advantage. But this first round, we're not going to have a lot of deep dives, other than like the 8-9s and 7-10s. A lot of it's going to be pretty straightforward. It doesn't matter who wins this for a bracket. It does for sports betting. We will have a show for a Tuesday pick. We will have all the Tuesday stuff out there. So we'll have all of that. For now, we're going to just move forward, though. Extra information. This is what you get part of the club for every single game across every sport that I model. Just as much information as I can provide. I've got it displayed in different ways so that if you like more information, less, you can consume it. So hopefully it's good information to help you in your studying. And just a quick reminder, if you're interested in supporting the show, you like this content, we're giving you about 2 hours here of this stuff. If you enjoy this, throw us $1 here for your first month of picks only. It's not quite everything that we're talking about. It's just stuff from the model, but even that alone gets you all those hockey picks that have won all that money. So Jake, I love what you said the other day when you hosted the show by yourself. And I gave you all the kudos in the world when I was with Cousin Jared the other day. And of course, no one saw that. But kudos to you for hosting a show that is very difficult. It's very hard.
It is.
As a professor myself, I've been up and done this a lot, so it's natural for me. But my gosh, it's hard. I think back to the first days when I was student teaching, man, I did not leave the overhead for like 2 weeks, and that tells you how old I am because there was an overhead. I don't think they're still using those anymore. But I love what you said. Take $1 off one of your bets, throw $1 our way here. You're gonna win some money, and then you're gonna see what's going on in the Discord. You're gonna have a lot of fun. You're gonna be making money, and at some point, it's not about spending money. It's about investing into all the money you can make. So check that out. But we're gonna move out of the deck of slides here, and we're going to move forward into the actual bracket itself. And again, this first round, we're going to fly through a lot of these, but I will provide again the projections here. Now you're going to have to bear with me, folks, because this is again a new setup, and so I am really kind of trying to figure out how to make this work the way I need it to. We're gonna actually go in time order and not bracket order. So we're gonna be hopping around the bracket a little bit, but I think this is gonna be easier, especially if you're taking notes about these games because you want to bet on them, or if you are, following along at home, because this will be the exact order of the projections and by time. We're gonna skip through the play-in games here. I'm just gonna go ahead and mark Duke to win because we don't have a projection for that. Auburn, we don't have a projection for it. Whatever the projection is gonna be. It's
One
gonna be
thing to look
insanely
out in
high.
the Duke game. Yeah, one thing to look out in the Duke game is you want to see how Cooper Flag's being used and see because that could be depend like that next matchup. That could be a big telltale sign of how well that ankle's doing or not doing. So it's something a reason to at least watch the first half of that game to see how tight or loose that ankle is.
Jake, you and I are good friends, I'd like to say, and I kind of hate to say this. Actually, no, sorry, not sorry. I kind of hope Cooper Flag just like does whatever injury in this first game that's going to keep him out for exactly 60 hours, and then I hope he feels perfectly fine. I don't really want him in pain for 60 hours, really. I want it to flare up about 30 minutes before they potentially play Baylor in round 2, and then I don't want him in pain. I just want to be like, I just can't play, coach.
You don't want to affect his money. You want him to get drafted well.
You're right. I really don't. And the kid's incredible, obviously. But again, we're going to start into Thursday. The early tip is going to be, let's see, Creighton and Louisville at 12:15. And again, I'm just going to kind of read off a couple of projections. If you're following along with us, it'll be about 10 seconds per game that you can ignore. We've got Louisville projected right now to win by an average of 4.5. The current spread is 2.5. Total, we've got a 144.5. Current total is 146. So we're pretty in line with that. We might have a slight lean to the under, a slight lean to Louisville.
Look, I am a Louisville fan here. Watching them in the championship game against Duke, the ACC championship, I was really impressed. Hepburn and Edwards and everybody, they've got some very, very good guards. They can really get going. I love Kelsey as a coach. I was a big fan of him at Charlotte. I just think Louisville's the better team here. Creighton, I mean, it's going to be a fun matchup. It's going to be a great game to watch. It's a lovely one to open with. Creighton battling a little bit of a road game here with playing in Lexington. It's a little unfortunate, but I guess that's the benefit of being in the 8th seed here is you get to be closer to home, and I think this really sets up fun for the next round if Louisville wins this, because Auburn's going on pretty much a road game. And Louisville played that ACC championship, gave Duke everything they wanted and more, and that was a road game for them. So imagine what they can do with a little bit of crowd, a little bit of momentum behind them. It could be just enough to flip this game to Louisville.
A couple of things here I want to say, and I don't want to stay too long on this because I know that we've got a lot to cover, but a couple of things. First off, I've only given 4 teams a half home court advantage in this first round. Louisville's one of them. It's not so much that I don't think that there are some advantages out there, because there absolutely are some advantages. I think like Oregon's playing in Seattle, like that's absolutely an advantage just up the road. But to some extent, like you're playing out of state, you're staying in a hotel that you've probably never stayed at, or if you had, maybe it's like the same one they stayed when they played Washington one time, like this year. So it's not like it's really that familiar. So it's one of those, like, it's an edge, but I'm like, I don't know how big of an edge it is. The 4 I've given out, I'll try to mention if I can remember. One of them is Louisville. Part of that is like Louisville's just down the road from Lexington, right? It's super, super close. On top of that, like, you have to think about geography a little bit here and think traveling fans and whatnot. And it's like, you're not going to get a lot of people coming to that game because there's nothing near Kentucky. No offense to Kentucky. Like, we're right next door to Kentucky here in Indiana, but there's not a lot close. So it's not like you're in some area where it's like, we talked about last week with MSG, right? People flocking there. It's a pilgrimage, right? And stuff like that. You're not going to have people really flocking to this. Not to say that you want to have some Auburn fans coming. Absolutely. But it's like, it's just, there's certain situations where I'm like, it's going to be pretty neutral. It's not going to be, but this one, like you said, like, it's going to be kind of like a home game. It's going to be just down the road. There will be a lot. Louisville's got a big fan base. There'll be a lot of them there. We're going to take Louisville to advance. I don't mind laying a small number with them personally from a sports betting perspective. If I'm playing this, I'm not touching the total, especially the early game. Some of those early games, man, they start, I swear I've seen these early tips start 10-2 after the first half of the first half. And then they get to halftime and it's like 32-29 and you're like, well, now what? Like, I don't know. Like, it's just, they get weird, some of those early ones. I'm laying it with Louisville. Jake, I'm curious your thoughts here. I love laying 2. We talk a lot about 2 being kind of a key-ish number because 1 is not likely to be, it's not that it doesn't happen, it's not overly common. So at that point, if they win, the worst you do is push. I like laying 2. What are your thoughts on 2, 2.5, 3, depending on if this number moves anywhere between now and Thursday morning?
3 is about as high as I go because I feel like it's a one possession game, and with Kalkbrenner in the lane, I think you're going to get more chances that the ends around 3. So I'd rather push a 3 with a chance to win there because the way Louisville shot that last game was incredible, and Creighton is just not that offensively firepower as they have been in the past. So I just trust Louisville just a tad bit more. So I go to 3 here. Hoping
that makes sense. I think because Jared had a similar conversation about one of the games that never got showed, and we kind of made the same comment in a similar thing where it's like, we're fading a team that's not bad. And so it's like, we don't want to get too crazy with this. Like, this team could easily win. We don't want to lay a huge price on the money line. As long as it's low, at some point, sometimes the number gets away from you. If you're not watching the slate of the week, you didn't get your stuff in, whatever. If this number's out to 3.5, 4, it is what it is. We got a lot of games. We don't have to press, right? You don't get a bonus multiplier because it's March Madness. As much as I would love that, and I know you would love that, we don't get that, So we can just pass if he gets up. For now, we're gonna pick Louisville to move on. We like laying 2, 2.5. Okay, 3's okay. We don't really want to go higher than that. And then again, we won't spend that much time on most of these games. For instance, this next one here, High Point and Purdue. We've got Purdue winning by an average of 8. They should win this game. Jake, the market has it right at 8-2. Both us and the market had the total in the low 150s. So obviously we think it's very likely Purdue wins. We've got them winning at a 77% clip. The question really is, can High Point hang in there, make this a game, maybe have an upset bid? Or is this one where we just say, don't overthink it, the better team should win? Is this on your radar at all for High Point knocking out Purdue potentially?
It's on my radar a little bit. Just because Purdue is Purdue, they've had a lot of trouble with these double digits
You never
teams
know.
recently, and this Purdue team is not weaker. I think they're a very good team. It's just it's the same kind of thing as they had with Edie. You know what it is you have to do. It's easy to figure out what you have to do. It's just hard to complete it. And High Point, it's a decent team, been playing well this year. I think if you want to get real risky with it, going High Point to cover the first half and then Purdue to cover the second half makes sense to me. But it's a little bit on the radar, not too much, just because I've seen Matt Painter drop these kind of games before.
This is a great game for what we have been talking about on our Discord channel, folks. So we're going to open it up to everybody. Whether you're watching us on YouTube, whether you're just following us on Twitter, whether you're with us on Discord, a Survivor challenge, Jake, that you and I I've run and you've been a part of for almost a decade now. It's a lot of fun. Quick, simple rules. Pick one team per day. They win, they lose, you lose. You can't use the same team twice. Now, there's a few other caveats that we can go over, but it's a lot of fun. Why is it a lot of fun? Well, first off, that previous game we just did, Louisville-Clemson, if Clemson wins that game, that shouldn't really matter to your bracket because, you probably had them losing the next round anyway. But, in these Survivor pools, the game you pick matters. And that makes it a lot of fun. I think this Purdue High Point game would be on a lot of people's radar for a Survivor pool. But personally, I look at Purdue and I think to myself, this is the most high variance team potentially in the tournament because we've seen with Edie them literally lose in the first round and also dominate. And this is just the poor man's version of that team. Like you said, it's very similar. It's just maybe not quite as good because Edie was just so dominant. And so it will be interesting to see, they could lose this game, and I would be surprised. It's about a 1 out of 4 chance, but I'd also be like you said, Painter and this Purdue team and whatever, right? We would just be. But also, you look at it, and they because it is hard to stop, they could make a little bit of run. So this Purdue team, I think, is fascinating to watch because I don't know what to expect from them at all. We're gonna, of course, advance Purdue to the next round. Montana, Wisconsin. We've got Wisconsin winning this by 18 on average. The market has it at 16.5. Total right at 150 for both of us. We've got Wisconsin winning this 92% of the time. Jake, this feels like a quick one. I don't know, really, is there much to say about Wisconsin?
No, Wisconsin was the team I had picked to look forward to upset, and then I saw their draw and was like, okay, I'm not that confident in Montana. It just shows what happened in the Big Ten Championship could happen to them at any time. Those last two games for them, they can absolutely blitz somebody, blow them out of the water, and just hit everything, or they can hit nothing and get beat a team that, you can get beat by a team like this, but I just don't think Montana's that team.
And have one half where one happens and the other happens and just be confused all around. They are also kind of an interesting team like that. But yeah, should be a pretty easy win there. Really not much to discuss. SIU, Edwardsville, and Houston, really same thing. The market's got this Houston 28.5. We've got it 26.5. Not that matters one bit, because when you get to that point, we are now talking about the full set of backups, of course, for Houston playing probably the entire second half. There just really is no reason for them to do much here. We've got them winning 97% of the time. Jake, we all feel very confident Houston's going to win. My question, actually, let's talk about the total in this game. The market's got this at 126.5. I've got it at 117. Now, part of that is the way I've built the model, right? I'm not a big believer, not that I don't believe in AI or machine learning. I believe in these models that I need to be able to understand them and explain them, because if I can't understand them, I can't fix what's wrong. And sometimes the machine learning, the AI, some of that stuff, I don't really know what's happening. So I can tell you, I have built the model specifically to look at the differential between the two teams and to lean towards the pace of the better team. That's the way it typically goes. Think about Virginia and Tay-Day. You could try to speed them up all you wanted, and it wasn't going to happen. You could maybe speed them up a little bit, but it wasn't really going to happen, right? You get a really fast team, and they're dominating, they will turn you over, they will score fast. So in those dominant matchups, it leans towards that team. The more even strength, that's where we go, ooh, who's going to win? Who's going to play, right? So the model's looking at this saying, Houston's going to play this really slow, and that's why the model likes this under. That doesn't mean it's right, because we don't know what's going to happen in tournament games. We don't know what's going to happen with backups, how this is going to run away. I'm curious your take though, Jake. Do you see it under a first half under? Do you see this, or are you just saying this game is just so out there? I'm just because I'm again, we talked about that. We're fine with that. We're fine with looking at the model, seeing what it says, and saying, yeah, but I don't think it's accounting for this, and so I'm going to stay away. What's your take on it?
My my biggest fear with the under here, because it is so low, um, is some sloppy play, some extra turnovers you get, and maybe some like because when you're looking at like a 60, like what, so Houston puts up 80, and
I mean,
that puts you off because if they're hitting the free throws, some threes go in, some extra turnovers, live ball turnovers, some
we,
dunks.
we'd be looking for 80-40 if they get
Yeah,
to 80. 80
yeah.
42, 80 43, something like that.
Which to me is reasonable. I would not a totally unexpected outcome for this game. I don't think that'll totally happen, but it's one of those like it's with it being too low. I'm scared of it being too low. I think it's an under style game. I just I think the number is priced too low at the moment for me to risk it.
And that's why I mentioned the first half, because sometimes that can play out. But you make a great point, and this is with Houston. We've seen this. So that's why I really want to talk about this game, even though it's a blowout, because the side, no, but the total, because a lot of times I look at Houston and the way they play, and they play these low scoring games, but they're playing defenses that are like just good enough to force them to shoot more jump shots. But as you mentioned, with some sloppier plays, some turnovers, if they're getting layups, if they're getting to the bucket and getting fouled, Houston will score. And so those are the games where Houston can score 80 or 90, right? It's that if the defense is just good. And so that's where it's like, I don't know. Jake, I'm going to throw one last thing out here. We got to move on. SIUE team total. The model has it at 45. Folks, you get team totals for every single game here from Silent. 45 is what it says. So I don't know what the number's going to be, but that might be one, Jake, that you and I are kind of looking at too, where we say, if the number's 49 and a half, do they get to 50? That might be worth an eyeball, right? At some point,
Yeah.
where's your number? At what point is that number where you're like, I know it's low, I think it goes under, but I just can't play it under a certain amount?
I I won't look at it until 50 because I just like I said, there's going to be a point in the game where Houston's pulled way back because they're a much better team, uh, and who knows how long the starters get to play. Like I don't know. I haven't looked at the roster makeup of this SIU. If they're a bunch of older guys, a bunch of seniors, 5th-year guys, I hope the coach lets them play. Like I mean, they haven't been here before. Let them play. Let them have the all the time,
Right.
and you start doing that, and the starter for one of these OVC teams might be as good as some of the lesser backups that they have for Houston, and then they get a few more points. Like I'm not going to look at it unless it comes out of 50 or more.
Right now, the implied team total would be 49. So that's why I said that. I think it's right in there, so it might be worth a look. 49 and a half, maybe, if not in that 50 range. If we're in that ballpark, could be worth it. If not, that's just going to be a game that we completely pass on because there's no need in wasting our time more there. We also have the next game in terms of the time would be Auburn again. We've already moved them on. We don't have a matchup yet for that one. McNeese State and Clemson. I've heard people talking about this one already. We've got Clemson winning this 72% of the time. Popular upset pick maybe with McNeese State. Has been a fun team these last few years. Massive resurgence with a new coach here recently. A team we've loved to bet on in the Southland. But we've still got Clemson winning 72% of the time by an average of 6. The books have it at 7.5, and so this is one where the model would say there might be a little bit of an advantage taking the points with McNeese State. Jake, I'm curious, how do you see it? Are you taking those points? Are you looking money line? Is this an upset spot, or are you maybe less sold on McNeese State's chances than what I've heard some other people talk about?
I'm less sold on their chances to win the game. I'm taking them with the points. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think it's because McNeese is a good team. Will Wade's a good coach. A little bit of caveat here. There's rumors out there with him in the NC State job. So how does that play in the locker room? And that doesn't. If it was a big number, that doesn't affect. But with these small numbers in this tight game, like who knows how that affects. I mean, Clemson is a good team, but they've also dropped games that they should not have anywhere been close to dropping. South Carolina being one of them. So I don't know. I'm going to take the points because I think this is going to be a tighter game, but I'm staying away from the money line. Just Clemson's too good at this point, and you've got the coach issue going on.
I tend to agree. It's a take the points or pass type thing. I think it might be worth looking into McNeese with those points, especially if you're over 7. I'm going to pick Clemson to move on. I don't really have a great feel for this team. I'm really interested to watch it. In fact, Jake, I don't know about you. To me, this pod might be the most chaotic pod. Like anything could happen there. You could literally have McNeese High Point, and I'd be like, sure, why not? Or it could be chalk Clemson Purdue, and I'd be like, Yeah, sure, why not? Like, I'm going with the chalk here just because in these bracket things, my goal is kind of like try to get the final four, try to get some deep things, and otherwise just don't get too stupid and try to just pick up a bunch of points and know I'm going to miss a few and do well enough such that if I do get the winner, then I've got a bunch of points elsewhere. And maybe I didn't pick every upset, but you don't have to pick every upset unless you're trying to be number one of everybody. And at that point, I don't know. I don't know how to do that, so I can't really help you there. VCU and BYU, another situation where I've given a half home court to BYU, and you might think, folks, why is that? They're in Provo. This game's in Denver, and folks, this one is actually something that I just kind of came to me, and I just kind of thought it. Provo, known for altitude. Denver, known for altitude. And when you look at this situation, it's not like it's a huge edge. It's just like an extra point or two here that we're really giving because VCU in Virginia, not really known for elevation for most of the state at least. And then when you get to the next game now, if they play Montana, they'll have a little bit of an elevation there. But if they play Wisconsin, that's not a high elevation. So BYU gets a nice spot for a 6 here. It's not that it's overly close. They should have some fans close enough, but also just the elevation's a really nice boost for them, in my opinion. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Jake, but with regards to the actual game, knowing I'm giving BYU a little bit of an extra boost there, I've got them winning 59% of the time by an average of 2.5. Market's at 3.5, so we're right in lockstep there. Total mid 140s, pretty lockstep there. How are you seeing this from just who moves on, survivor pool, betting? There's a lot of ways we could talk about this game.
This is one I'm not going to touch in Survivor because I kind of lean VCU to win the game. I'm trying to work it out. To me, in these games like this, VCU is a very, very good defensive team. Very, very solid. BYU is all offense, still almost like Mark Pope never left. There's a reason Pope never won a tournament game there, and I'm not saying it's the same thing, but when you're all offense and no defense, and that first initial adrenaline burst hits for playing in the tournament, those shots go a little long, or you're playing in a new arena, the different views, shots are a little off, you're depending on the three, you get behind, you give this team, that VCU, who believes they should be with the big boys, and all of a sudden they get the little lead, they start locking it in, and then that butthole gets a little tighter if you're trying to avoid the upset, and then those shots go short, or you start aiming them. So it's one of those that I can very easily see an upset happening. I'm not calling it yet, not an official pick yet, but it's one I'm very, very much looking into.
It's definitely a close spread from the model and the books for a reason. I think this is going to be an interesting one with regard. I'm like you, survivors. No way I would touch this. With regards to your bracket specifically, I think this is an interesting one because I can see BYU advancing out of this pod with the elevation being the thing that does it, gets them over the hump. Just saying we're going to run and gun and we're going to really exhaust these teams. They could lose this first game. And then all of a sudden that completely shakes out how you see the next game because now you're going, okay, BYU's got some talent. They can hit some threes. They can run up and down. Tired legs from Wisconsin potentially at the altitude. BYU got a chance to win that one. It's like, but they may not even be there. And so this game, I think, here is going to be pretty big for some early points. I'm not sure how much it matters deeper, but at least early on. I think I'm going to go for BYU on this one. I'm actually hedge my bets. I'm going to take BYU in the first round. I'm going to go ahead and sneak peek. I'm actually going to take Wisconsin in the second round. Just so I'm not all in on this theory, right? I'm trying to kind of play the middle ground where I think this doesn't matter. Don't get crazy. That's just my theory. We'll see how it goes. Jake, last call from a betting standpoint. If you had to bet this, where is your head at with laying a low number? Are you just going money line and just like, hey, plus odds, I don't know what's going to happen? That's what I'm hearing. I just want to kind of confirm with you.
So right now, from a total standpoint, I'm leaning over, just because I think it's tight in free throws, but not pulling that.
Maybe overtime?
Yeah, I think this of the ones we've covered so far, maybe Creighton Louisville. This is probably the closest overtime we're going to get, and I don't know. I'm definitely going to be taking plus the points. I can almost 100% say that. It's just, do I get bold enough to take the money line as well?
Yeah, when you can get a number, especially depending on what that number is, right? Depending on if you're getting 3.5, right, and how you're splitting. So, also, just of course, folks, Jake's available on Discord. Just tag him, and you can ask him these follow-up questions specifically as numbers change as well. I can give your opinion. Tag me, my opinion. We got a bunch of people you can tag there. We can kind of discuss as these numbers move, maybe as things change. So a lot going on over there. Don't forget, last day game here for Thursday, Georgia and Gonzaga. We've got this Gonzaga winning 75% of the time by an average of 7. The books are pretty close in line here at 6.5 right now. Kind of in that dead spot around 7 where you say, I kind of don't know which way to take it. Jake, what's your take on Georgia Gonzaga?
I don't know. I'm so twisted in knots over this game because Gonzaga has all the talent, much more talented team, but that has not played it this year at all. Georgia is a very solid team. I mean, they beat Kentucky, they beat Florida, gave Auburn a game, gave Tennessee a bit of a game. Like they've and then they've dropped games out of nowhere too. So it's I don't know. I really have zero clue what's happening in this game. It's one I've got circled. I think it's a very interesting matchup. The next round for the one you've got picked with Houston and Gonzaga, that is more fun than Houston Georgia would be. Uh, I don't know if I trust Gonzaga to make it out yet, so I don't know what I'm doing here.
Sideline has this as the third best quality game of the first round, partially because we think it could be close enough. We think there should be some points, and the talent level is really there. And that's kind of what differentiates early on is closeness and talent level being combined. And this is supposed to be one of the good games. Jake, the last thing I want to say about this game, I'm picking Gonzaga to move on my bracket, as you can see there on the screen. I think this is important to differentiate bracket versus survivor versus sports betting. And that's why we're kind of trying to hit a little bit of all three there, because I know a lot of people like to do all three, right? And if not, at least I'm hitting what you're looking for. But when you talk about the spread, is a very different story to lay 7. Laying 7 with Gonzaga, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do it. I'm just saying it's a very different ass than in the bracket where I just get to pick who wins, and there's no odds with it. I'm not laying minus 300 or something right there. So they're the better team. I'm going to pick them to move on to the bracket. That's actually the easiest decision to make. The betting one, I'm like you. I have no idea at this point how to handle it. Maybe one of our other cappers will, so we'll have a chance as we get closer to see what we think there. From a survivor standpoint, Gonzaga might be a sneaky, interesting pick from a survivor standpoint. I'm not saying they can't lose that game, but you're going to have to take a risk somewhere because you can't reuse the same teams. And this is one where you look at saying, I'm not going to use them against Houston. So people will be picking Gonzaga in their survivor pools. I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm just saying people will be picking them. So that's something to take note of. Moving to the evening slate, we're going to start off here with Wofford and Tennessee. We got Tennessee winning this 93% of the time by an average of 17 total in the low 130s. That's about where the books have it. We might have a slight lean to the under for the same reasons about Houston. Tennessee's the much better team. They want to go slower, but does that mean you should be playing the under? The same caveats we said with Houston apply here. Jake, you can add more if you want, but in general, it's the same concept of this could get ugly. We don't know what's going to happen late. That makes it a little bit tougher to dissect. We have a really good feeling Tennessee's going to win. Do you have anything else to talk about from a side or total standpoint?
Yeah, at 130, it's a lot easier to do the under. Just those 10 or 12 extra points really matter in those in that very small total. That's a big difference there. So I'm a little more comfortable taking that under than I am the under 117 with Houston.
All right, so yeah, low 130s there. I think we're seeing maybe 133-ish. Model's got about 130, 131, so a little bit of an underlook for us there early on. We'll talk a lot about Tennessee as we move forward. Jake, you big Tennessee fan, and of course in part 2 we will obviously be talking about them as they are hoping, of course, to make a deep run. Please. Arkansas and Kansas, I love when these two teams play just because they are the only two states in the union whose names end with Kansas. Maybe we should add for a third, I don't know. We've got this Kansas winning a nice 69% of the time by an average of about 5.5. Books have it at 4.5, so we might lay it with Kansas as the slight lean. Total 145. We've got a little bit under, so we're kind of leaning Kansas, kind of leaning under for the model. Do you think the model's telling the full story there, or are you seeing something else?
I think I'm seeing something else. I like Arkansas in this game. I do not like Kansas. I don't think the makeup of this team is played out all year. And I believe I said this at the beginning of the year. I do not like how this team is make up. I think their pieces are very talented individually, but they are not well fit together, and that's played out. And they've well underperformed what their season expectations were supposed to be. And Arkansas, man, Cal is the reason I'm not like full bore going heavy on the money line here. They have got all the talent in the world. Boogie Flane coming back is a big difference maker, I think, too. He's supposed to be available for this game. So they've got depth, they've got speed, they've got the talent. I mean, Brazil is a roller coaster of a player, but he can also be a huge difference maker. I think size wise, they match up perfectly with Hunter Dickinson. They can be very physical what they do. Big Z can guard him on the perimeter, so they can eliminate pretty much scratch off Kansas's best player. And I'm not sure where the offense comes from for Kansas, so I really like Arkansas here.
I'm not saying Gonzaga can beat Houston. I'm not trying to imply that, but I do think it's interesting. We just talked about Gonzaga, now we're talking about Kansas. Two teams that we talk about kind of have the talent, but just haven't quite weren't able to always get it together. Now you did see more hope from Gonzaga there at times, especially that championship game against St. Mary's where they looked so good. And so after a kind of a disappointing regular season, the furthest they've been behind first place, it feels like in 20 years. Maybe there was one. Someone don't correct me, but it feels like in 20 years. Because, they win it every year. If they don't, it's like tied, basically. I think it's interesting. The model has Gonzaga ranked 8th and Kansas 15th. I think, which is what you were saying, is that while Gonzaga has question marks and is like they've got the talent, but you're like, they've at least got maybe something going there where the model's like seeing it. Whereas Kansas at 15, it's kind of like, you've got the talent, but I think about Kansas playing St. John's potentially in round 2. If they could get it all together, that could be a really good game. But we've been waiting for it all year. I mean, I remember at the very beginning of the year, you said, I'm looking to fade Kansas early until they can figure out how to get their pieces to work. And it's like, you literally never stop saying that. It feels like it's just kind of been the way it's gone. They just haven't gotten it to work, and so you just kind of been on that train. So not really a huge game for your bracket, I don't think. St. John's is almost assuredly going to be able to make it out. So pick one, it doesn't matter. With regards to the betting, I'm like you. If I was going to do it, I would just take the plus over the money line, just being like, I don't know what's going to happen. I wouldn't take points because Kansas could win this game by 20. I would just take the money line and just say, you know what? I'm rooting for chaos in March Madness half the time, and just take the big plus odds, and who knows? Would be kind of my thought. Yale and Texas A&M. Yale ranked number 58, which I think is incredible for an Ivy League school. Much better, I think, than people realize, which is part of the reason why this is not a double-digit spread. It's only 7.5, and sidelines in lockstep at 7. Total right around 140. So from a betting perspective, at least as of right now, the model doesn't have much for us. Now, again, we've got a bunch of other handicappers. I'm curious what they think. Jake, you're one of them. I'm curious what you think. Do you see anything from a spread here that the model isn't capturing, or are you looking at it like the model does, which is kind of like, I think it's priced pretty well, and I kind of think this, but I kind of think this. Wiffle waffling. Where are you at?
This is when I'm going to look to live bet because I think the opening 4 minutes can really tell you a lot about it. With the way, because Yale is a very, very good team, but if A&M's on, it's hard.
Yale has won this exact game before against my Baylor Bears. I think it was a 12-5, not a 4-13, but they've won this game before.
Yeah, I mean, they're very, very good. There's not and they're going to play their game. It's just what game is Texas A&M bringing, and if it's the good one. Good luck, Yale, because that defense is suffocating. And then if I can't think of his name, star guard from Texas A&M, if he's hitting those ridiculous shots he hits, there's not much you can do about it. But if those aren't going, that guy? Yeah, but if those aren't going, there's not a ton of help for him out there. And then that's when Yale can feed it down to that big guy they have and just take the air out of the ball and just slowly pull away, because they've got a very good guard too. I can't remember his name, but they've also got a big dude. I want to say he's around 7 foot, but he's a big country boy, and it handles his business down low. And it's going to be tough on Texas A&M if their offense isn't going. But so right now it's a live bet situation for me.
We definitely, I've seen about this. We definitely need some music here in the background to keep people. I don't know how many people are still watching. If you're still watching this, folks, though, I'm going to give you a pick, not from me, and not from Jake, and not even from Cousin Jared. I'm going to give you a pick from me pretending to be Cousin Jared based off what he said the other night, which was, and again, this is unfortunate that no one was able to see the great show we did. He made the comment. He said with A&M, he's seen them all year. They managed to keep every game close. If they get up early, they're going to blow it, and it's going to be close. And if they fall behind, they're going to catch up because they're a good team, and it's going to be close. That doesn't happen every time, but hearing him say that, I like Yale plus 7.5 because there's a lot of ways that A&M screws around and makes this game close. Yale maybe wins it, maybe takes it to overtime, maybe they lose by 5. Right? There's a lot of ways that one cashes. So I think Cousin Jared would probably tell you that if you're getting 7.5 against A&M with a good team, you kind of have to take it. I think he's going to be more concerned where the spread gets closer to 0, and he's like, all these games are close, even when they shouldn't be. And so that's one thing, of course, to keep in mind. Wrapping up towards the end of day one, we're at the last game of the early night session, day one, Drake, Missouri. We've got Missouri winning 60% of the time, before I can even go any further, I just have to point out Drake and their pace, which is like I don't even understand what's happening with this. I feel like that just kind of came out of nowhere to me and just surprised me. Just them being like, we're gonna play a lot slower than like I feel like Drake's ever played before. So a little bit of an interesting matchup anytime Drake's involved, folks. They went 30-3 for a reason. This is a team that can make some things happen. We've got Missouri winning by an average of 3. The books have it at 6, so the model's really liking not so much an upset as much as it's saying it's liking the value of a money line upset or the value of the point, saying the model thinks that Drake can keep this a little bit closer. How do you see it, Jake?
Yeah, this is a trendy one and trendy for a reason because Missouri is. I like Dennis Gates as a coach, but they're so fast and they are so guard oriented and 3 oriented that I think Drake can absolutely slam the brakes on them, and I'm not sure what they do there. And I think they can screw around and easily lose this one. Drake is a very very good team. They can come out and dominate and win, and they can pull out this slow game. They're very Virginia-esque. That the coach, I forget his name, came from D2. I mean, he won 4 championships and 3 in a row. Like he knows how to coach in a tournament. It's not some rookie guy coming in with a mid-major team that played well all season. He brought a good chunk of his players with him too. So like it's the lack of experience you normally see with one of these like Drake mid-major type teams isn't there. I think this is Missouri is primed for an upset, and with the way they play and the way the tournament's typically called versus like how the SEC's been played all year, it is one of those that I fear that the SEC, being as good as they are, is going to be a disservice to how the game is called because they're going to be used to a more physical game and it's going to get called tight, especially in these opening games. And then you have teams not getting played. Like so, I like Drake here to win. I like it. I'm definitely taking the cover. Probably picking another winner here.
I like that, and I like we said, it's just a good reminder, folks, too. Like the SEC was really good in basketball this year. If they go 8-14, or if they go 22 and whatever, that doesn't change the fact they're really. I just want to make sure we're good with it. That's like bowl season, right? Like I just don't like hearing this like, well, they fell apart and blah. It's like it's all about matchups. It's all about one game. Like the SEC can lose a bunch of these toss-up first-round games. That doesn't mean they were a crap conference. Right? I don't want to make it weird. They were really good, right? Last thing I'll point out here before we head to the night games, I think it's insane that if you think about a Mount Rushmore +1 of the super slow teams, I'm going to go to the top 5 super slow teams that Jake, you and I and cousin Jared have been talking about on this show for absolutely years now. It's the same 5, and obviously we didn't have as many shows this year, and life got crazy when we talking about that. We're back at it now, but those 5 are the same 5, and you could probably name them: St. Mary's, Houston, Virginia, North Texas, Wagner. And sure enough, those, according to Ken Palm right now on pace, are literally 359, 360, 361, 360, 363, and Drake is of course 364. They have outdone them all. And so, I mean, they play. I talked about cousin Jared. No one heard that, sadly. But when you talk about March Madness and having success, pulling the upset, making it deep, it's all about who can do something really, really good that is really going to mess everybody up. And that can be the pace. It worked for Virginia one year. It didn't work from the other year, right? You never know. But that can be a difference maker. Drake's got it. That will take us to the late slate for Thursday before moving to Friday. Another 4-pack here: Utah State and UCLA. Jake, I don't know about you. I feel like Utah State's been a team that have constantly been, seeing the last several years as a team that's got some talent and whatnot. I kind of wonder if they're ever going to really make a stamp, really actually do anything, because then they become an afterthought, I feel like, where it's like they're kind of good, but they can't actually do anything. They'll get their chance here against a UCLA team that maybe a little bit of a disappointing season. Obviously, changing conferences and all 4 of those teams had were up against it there, but the model's still high on UCLA, still playing a great defense. Model says they win about 2 out of 3 times by an average of 5.5. That's exactly where the books are right now. So according to Sideline, that 5.5 seems about right. UCLA probably wins, 2 out of 3 times, but 1 out of 3 things, of course, happen. So Jake, is this one you have your eye on for an upset for Utah State to finally get out of this, at least from my mind, this constant, inability to really, put your name on the map, or is this going to be, that UCLA, the name on the front of the jersey, the history, the legacy, the great coaching, of course, there, and that coming through. How do you see this one?
Like, if Utah State could keep a coach for more than like 2 years, it would be great for them because I think they're on their like third or fourth consecutive tournament with third or fourth different coach, which is just outstanding for a
Yeah.
school to pull off. But I also think they win this one. I think they break through. I think UCLA limps into the back end of the year. There was nothing in the Big Ten tournament that showed any kind of promise. I didn't think because I mean they beat a USC team that came off a overtime game, and it really didn't beat them that badly. Got drilled by Wisconsin. The wins they had in the late part of the year were an IU team that who knows what to make of. Ohio
Mm.
State that really tanked off. Then they also got beat by Minnesota, and they got drilled by Purdue. I, I just don't see much good happening for them at the end of the year. I think they're tired and worn down. Mick Cronin has a tendency to kind of wear on people for a while, and this is one of the teams I think the personality just didn't work out well, and I think it's going to show right here. We're going to get a Utah State victory.
And of course, you talk about Indiana. I'm thinking when all the brackets are being unveiled, Indiana was that team people were talking about as closed at like minus 3,000 to make the tournament. And then I feel like I completely forgot all about that with the West Virginia ridiculousness that the first time
Yeah,
ever teams made 111 bracket of 111, like all 111 bracket predictions, which is like people, computers, and
yeah.
people making computers, and I don't know, computers making people and every option, anyway.
It's
Um,
criminal what happened to West Virginia. It
yeah,
is.
yeah, really bad there. But you make some good points, and that was kind of the thing with the Big Ten that was interesting. We talked about the SEC kind of taking over that top basketball conference a little bit from the Big 12 more than anything, because people think about the Big Ten, but the Big Ten's been just so chaotic here these last few years, and they've had some good basketball, but it's just been they've kind of been second fiddle to the Big 12. Now they're second fiddle, of course, to the SEC, and still that same sort of I don't really know what to make of some of these teams. It's like they've got some talent, but just can they put it all together? I'll go Utah State here for the purposes of the bracket. Again, kind of as I mentioned earlier, I don't really mind picking a 10 in these cases, the 8 9. It doesn't really matter much for the bracket. This is again where the survivor pool could be a lot of fun. But we get it relatively close to a toss up here, 5.5. I'll go with the upset here just because I want to pick a couple, but I think I want to point out where I want to pick a couple upsets. And unlike you, I haven't been overly impressed with UCLA, and or if nothing else, they're just so inconsistent. Um, if you want to pick an upset or two, it's in these situations here where I absolutely have them losing the next round, so it doesn't really matter what I pick here. It's just 1 point, and so those are your options there. With regards to a betting standpoint, Jake, you're low on UCLA. Are you leaning more taking 5.5 points, or are you looking more taking the plus odds in the money line or split?
I'm splitting here because like I said UCLA good team, Cronin good coach. Like it's nothing against them, and Utah State hasn't done it yet. So I want you to prove it to me. Uh, but also believe that I mean everybody's so high on the San Diego State team thinks they're gonna cakewalk through North Carolina, and this Utah State team beat them. And I would venture to say UCLA and North Carolina aren't that far apart. So if you're the believer of San Diego State, Utah State would be a big money line play for you, I would think, but I'm going to split my vote here.
Yeah, a logical follow up there. Of course, that Utah State offense, their strength going up against that UCLA defense, that'll be a really interesting matchup. If they can kind of solve something, find something that works, I think they got a really good chance to pull the upset there. That's obviously though easier said than done. Omaha and St. John's at a 12, a 215. Obviously, St. John's really good. We've got them at 96% to win. By an average of 23, the books only have it at 19. But I'll make the same comment there that I would have made earlier with Houston and Tennessee. But this time it's not about the slow tempo. Now it's more about the models, kind of looking at St. John's, of course, that suffocating defense combined with that incredible pace. And Jake, we talk a lot about teams that are good on defense and slow things down, the St. Mary style, the old school Virginia, the Houston style. To see a team like St. John's and what Rick Pitino has done there with that just outstanding defense, but also playing up tempo, that can be a nightmare for a lot of teams. You've seen why they've been so good this year. They're going to be a fantastic fun team to watch. We'll talk more about them as they get on later. With
Yeah.
regards to this game, because we don't need to talk about who's going to win. If Omaha wins, I mean, we will all be on the edge of our seat because that would be so much fun for the upset
Fantastic.
purposes. It's fantastic. We love upsets, right? Just nothing against anybody. Just upsets are fun. But they're probably going to run away with it. The question I have for you is, how do you see this as a spread perspective? I know you've watched a lot of St. John's. You've been interested in Patino. When the model says something like 23, and we know part of that is thinking playing kind of a foolish game, playing that up tempo, that pressure, those quick turnovers. When you see the books at 19, what that tells me is maybe the books are looking at this thinking St. John's going to let the paddle, knowing another game is coming. Absolutely very logical thought. So the market, the books a little bit lower. Are you saying I still want to lay it with St. John's? They were really good to us here down the stretch here as we came back in the conference tournament. Or are you kind of staying away saying, I'm not really sure either how the end goes. It's not worth it.
I'm laying it with St. John's. I
All
don't think
right.
Patino has the let up in him. I think he is hard nosed and like this is vintage Patino. This Louisville and Kentucky squads, the way they play, how the defense, the pace. I think he lays into it and they just keep going. I don't think the starters are going to play crazy minutes, but I just don't think there's let up in it when anybody comes in. And Omaha, thanks for being here. But I think this is like one of the teams that's first time ever making it, and it's just, oh no, not a great job. But
And a good season for them. Sightline's got
yeah,
him at 157th. I mean,
yeah,
that's nothing bad against them. It's just like you said, really tough draw here against St. John's. So there's a play for you there if you're betting. Laying the points with St. John's. You know, we're seeing like 19 right now, something like 20. They were really good to us before, and you mentioned there's previous stops, Patino. You know, clear reason why he called it coach. So few have ever been able to figure out how to play that good a defense with that pace. And there's a synergistic effect there, as we often talk about. With if you can get those turnovers speeded up, it can really spiral fast, and that's what St. John's wants to do to teams. Of course, that's Patino's thing is to suffocate them out. So we're gonna have them there. We're gonna lay the points. We'll talk more about St. John's later. Jake, you see San Diego 30-4, a popular team. I'm hearing a lot of people talk about Michigan, a team with plenty of talent and at times looked like they might be a top 10 team, struggling to put it together here. UC San Diego, according to Sideline, ranked 39. That just blows my mind that a team from that conference would be ranked in the top 40s. I mean, the model is really impressed with them. They are no joke. Sideline's got this at 60-40 Michigan, with Michigan winning by an average of 3. The books have it at 2.5. So we're kind of right on the same idea there. We might be a little bit lower on the underside of 140. The books are on the overside of 140. But Jake, a game everyone is talking about. This is one of those games where when we think about the first round matchups that people are here to talk about. I feel like this has got to be one of them. Is this the proverbial 12-5 upset here? Can UC San Diego pull it off, or is Michigan going to escape? What's your take?
like I like this UC San Diego team. I've been riding them a lot here towards the end of the year. They do not turn the ball over at all. They just refuse to do it, which is great to win games. Their defense is very, very, very good. Um, we'll see how it plays at the big boy level. We don't know too much about that from that standpoint, but when it comes down to how this game is played and how Michigan wants to play, those two 7-footers make a world difference, and that's the only thing that would have me hesitate with Wolf and Vlad Gold. No, I can't remember his last name, but those that's there's not a lot of people, not a lot of teams in the world that can counter a pick and roll between two 7-foot guys and one handling the ball very well. Uh, I just think if Michigan comes out cold shooting, they're going to have a very tough time like breaking through on this one. It's like because you saw in that Wisconsin game, they won it at scoring less than 60 points, so they can do that. But Wisconsin's not this style, not used to playing that style, like where their best player goes 1 of 15 and stuff. You're not going to see that here. That you see San Diego. Like I love it. This is an incredible story. First year eligible, made won the tournament, won the. And they're had a very, very good year, and they're in a prime upset spot. I like it as an upset, but it's also going to be trendy. So when you're doing your brackets, if you want to go counter, you could probably pick Michigan and maybe score a few points here. But it's also a big risk because the reason it's trendy is because it looks likely.
there's so much to talk about this game. I love this game for so many reasons. I love that it's a 10 p.m. tip. I
Yes.
would have loved if it was a noon tip as well, because if it was a noon tip, you'd have been like, oh, this is prime 5-12 upset season here with the five sleeping early on. But I love it at 10 p.m. because then you get to drunk basketball. And like this game to me is that game that I am like, there's some years where Thursday is just terrible. And it's unfortunate. Those first 12 games, there's like one upset, and it wasn't even that exciting. It was like a 9/8 or something.
Yeah.
This is that game that I'm like, it's going to save us. Or if we've had an amazing Thursday, I'm like, oh baby, here's the cherry on top. Is this game right here? I'm really looking forward to this game. UC San Diego, they're so balanced, they're so good on offense and defense, which again is crazy for these small schools. They tend to rise to power in a way like Gonzaga did, which was kind of all offense at the beginning, and the way they're playing. Or St. Mary's all defense kind of at the beginning. Virginia even I remember in their rise when they were coming up, all defense, right? They're doing it so on both sides of the ball. I love it. Here's the thing I want to say for people about picking this game a couple different ways. First off, if you're betting, this is becoming trendy. The number is low. I don't think there's any edge there. That doesn't mean you shouldn't bet it and you can't bet it. I'm sure someone of our people someone will have a pick. We'll have some discussion over on Discord because I think we'll have discussion on every single one of these games. So does that mean there's not a pick to be made? No, I'm just saying where the number is now, you're not catching anyone off guard. You're not now. Maybe if this opened 5, maybe you grabbed a 5 and people didn't realize it, and I don't know where it opened. But it's gone now. That's the bottom line. And so you're not going to get any value because everyone knows UC San Diego is good. It's not like you're sneaking up on anything. The only way you're going to be a good sports bettor is if you're finding plays, making on angles and things different than what the market is. And that's just not here for that. With regards to a bracket challenge, what we're talking about here, I wanted to wait on this one. I think this is one of the key games to your bracket challenge for the fact if you get past the whole, all that matters is picking the Final Four. Because yes, all that matters is picking the Final Four. But this one I think is so interesting because of the Yale Texas A&M one on the other side of it. If you pick one upset, are you picking the other upset? Does that mean you're picking the other team to go through? And I think there's just a lot of dominoes in how you want to really set up this pod. And so I'm going to pick UC San Diego for the upset here. I'm not sure they can make it all the way. I think it's a great story. I would be rooting for them to make it into the Sweet 16, but I'm going to go with Texas A&M here to advance to the Sweet 16 with regards to saying, I think they're going to make things close. I think they're going to give their fans a heart attack. But at the end of the day, when I see them playing against the level of athlete from Yale and UC San Diego, I think about what they played in the SEC. And I think at the end of the game, that helps them pull away. But I think those all kind of play together for your bracket. Then moving to the penultimate game, or the whatever, the lab was I don't know, whatever, the final game of the night. Maybe asterisk. You never know with these times what changes around. But what might be the final game of the night? UNC Wilmington, Texas Tech. UNC Wilmington, a pretty strong offense, but probably going to be pretty overmatched here. Tech is really, really good. They beat my Baylor Bears in the Big 12 tournament by making 900 3-pointers. Baylor had one turnover in the first half and shot like 50%. Was down like 10. And that's what Tech can do to you. UNC Wilmington's going to be pretty overmatched here. Model says Tech wins this almost 9 out of 10 times by an average of 12.5. Jake, here's the interesting thing. I'm high on Tech here. I think Tech gets the job done. The books have it at 15.5. So how are you seeing this? For brackets, we're all going to pick Tech for the most part. You can be crazy if you want, but Tech's the logical choice here. How are you seeing the book saying 12.5 versus the market saying 15.5? What's your thought process there?
I'm scared of 15.5. That like because Wilmington is a good team. They're very good offensively, and Tech goes through lulls. So I'm scared of that. I'm probably not going to touch the spread, and I might grab it over in the total because, like you said, if Tech starts hitting their threes, you know what? Wilmington's got an offense. They're at some point they're going to go on a little bit of a run, whether it's early, mid, or like late. They're going to have at least one run where they make Texas go, and then after that who knows? But I just beating this team by 20 points very possible, but it's going to be tough. And like to cover 16, you're probably going to need to be up at 25 at some point
Mm.
throughout the game, and that to feel comfortable with it. And it's just not something I'm counting on, and I'm definitely not counting on UNC Wilmington to cover because Tech's defense. McCaslin that came from North Texas, very good defensive coach. He could very well get going. There's not a lot Wilmington's going to be able to do with JT Toppin. So it's like I don't know, and so I'm staying away. Tech's going to win the game. I'm not worried about that, but
Yeah, when I saw the projection of this at 12 and a half, I'm thinking this is one where I'd be comfortable playing it kind of up to that because I think they can kind of pull away here. If it's 11, if it's 12, then I see 15 and a half, and I'm like, whoa. And I don't, it's the number. By the time you're watching this, who knows where the number goes? But up in that level, it's kind of like, well, I feel like we've missed the boat on that one. I'm not taking those points because Tech could easily
Yeah.
win this game by 20 and nobody would be shocked. But also, like you said, like UNC Wilmington's not bad. They've got an offense and they can score. The key for them, I think, hanging in this game is just going to be keeping that offense going. They're not going to be able to really stop Tech, and Tech's going to hit the runs too. It's like you said, it's making sure they hit the run, making sure they make the lull shorter. If they can keep scoring points, this could get high scoring, could get fun. They can hang around, probably won't pull it off. And so we'll take Texas Tech there to win. From a betting standpoint, I'm going to kind of pull a little bit what I usually try to pull with Cousin Jared on the college football show is interpret what you said. I think I like what I'm hearing you're saying about the scoring. Might be a live overplay
Yeah.
for me. One of those. Let's wait and see. I like the idea. Let's see. Sometime in the first half. Let's not wait too late. Sometime in the first half, maybe after a lull from either team, really, because either team can get smoking, right? And just see if we can get a better number than what's out there now. Wait for it to people get a little bit, whatever. And if it starts off on fire, whatever. We watch the other games. We move on with life. No big deal. But that could be our best opportunity in that one. That's Thursday, halfway there for this episode, and then we'll wrap us up here on the next episode with the rest of the bracket. Baylor and Mississippi State starting us off at 12:15 Eastern. Sidelines got Baylor slightly favored. The model agrees with the other models that are out there that we're looking at. Again, we kind of look at some other models, some and not that I'm necessarily taking like what Ken Palm does, and I mentioned this before. Make sure when you see the Ken Palm projection here, I'm not actually pulling from his paid projections. That's his paid stuff. I'm not pulling that projection in there to give you that. What I'm doing is I'm estimating from him from his power ratings, and so when I do that with a couple different places, we've all kind of liking Baylor, but the books have Mississippi State favored. So the total we've got pretty spot on. It's somewhere in the 50-50 range. I think we'd all agree with that. 8-9. It's just when you look at some of these models, they're a little bit higher on the Bears. The market's a little bit higher on the Bulldogs. Which way do you see this going? Because at this point, you kind of just got to pick a winner, and your winner's the same in the bracket challenge, and the winner's how you play the money line. It's one of those rare games where it's kind of however you're going to play it, you're going to play it, and we don't have to think too much about things. How do you see it playing out?
Well, yeah, my gut call says Baylor here. I, I I like Jans as a coach. It just seems there's something about Mississippi State that just can't get it done when they needed to get it done. Uh, like when that seems to be like every sport. I think they won baseball a handful of years ago, and that was like the one time. But they were so good then, like they didn't have to like really. It just always seems they get so close and just can't pull away. And this Baylor team is good. It's underperformed all year, really, from what I expected. I mean, Jeremy Roach was a good get that just didn't pan out. I mean, Edgecombe being hurt, then dealt with some injuries. Edgecombe being out for a bit, and uh, I mean, Norchad O'Meara, I think he put up a crazy number in that last Big 12 tournament game. Was just unstoppable. I loved him at Miami. He was a big reason that year they made the Final Four. Him coming back healthy, I took him to make the Final Four. That you got the pieces to do it. Chance is a good coach. Drew's just as good a coach. I don't think there's a coach edge. So that's why I'm gonna go Baylor, but I'm probably not actually. My money's not going to be riding on this one. It's one of those ones that if I make multiple brackets, I'm taking Baylor once and Mississippi State the other, like every other one, because I don't know what's going to happen. I feel like Baylor's the best choice, but there's also the world where Baylor comes out and forgets to score, and then Mississippi State does it.
I've lived that a few times this year. I think. I think this is an educational show, right? So people are watching the bracket, and so I hope you're enjoying this content. But I do want to bring up something here that I think is kind of important for our sports betting strategy, right? When we think about probabilities and how to integrate that with our lives, I think you almost kind of said it pretty well here. Is if you've got this as Baylor 55%, we're going to say 60% for the sake of round numbers. Well, what that means is if you make 10 brackets, that means you should put Baylor to win in 6 of them, Mississippi State to win 4 of them. And most people I think get that. I think you said that, Jake. I think that came very naturally to you. I think that comes natural to our audience to hear that. I think what doesn't come natural to people, or they sometimes have to be, kind of thinking about, these things is the logical, not extremes, but as you continue on the probability scale, holds true as well. If you have a team that's 80-20 and you fill out 10 brackets, you should have them to lose two of them, even though you think they're going to win. And some of you are like, wait, where are you going with this? This is about sports betting because this is about the odds that you get. It doesn't matter if you think a team wins or loses. It matters what percentage of the time you think they do relative to the price you're getting. And that's why moneyline betting is so easy for us because I get this and I know what to do and I've got it all, the math and it's not perfect, but it helps us, right? And that's the difference between spread, right? And so, Jake, we talk about this all the time with spreads. Like, spreads are it's a lot easier for us to say, how do you think they're going to win? How do you think the game's going to play out? And that doesn't mean we can't be overconfident, underconfident. We got to watch for stuff there. But the probability part's really hard because for most people, if you say, I think they win 8 out of 10 times and you make them have 10 brackets, they're going to put that team to win on 8 of them. It's like poker's the same way. When you talk about poker and your edges, and they say these coin flip situations between should you bluff or should you fold, you literally should, and people do. The good poker players, they literally have a randomizer at their, they can legally do that, and it randomly generates something, or they used to could, I don't know, and that would tell them to fold or whatever because they needed to try to make it play to the probabilities. And so I say all that just to say that that's important to think about with your moneyline sports. That's important because baseball it's coming up. Hockey's happening right now, and that's why we're crushing it in these moneyline sports. Anyway, just a little plug there. Moving on, I'm moving Baylor on. I'm going to have them to win here. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm scared to watch it. Robert Morris, Alabama. Robert Morris, 26-8, a nice little season for them. But of course, even though their record is almost identical to Alabama, we kind of think Alabama's better. I know that's surprising to you. We have them winning 95% of the time by an average of 23.5. The books got it at 22.5. They've got the total 165. We've got 166. We just think one more point. The books say 94.71. We've got 95.71. So from a sports betting standpoint, I don't know how to handle this game at all. I'm not sure there's much of an edge. Maybe there is somewhere. We are right in sync. Obviously, Alabama's going to win the game. Here's the 2 seed again. If not, it'd be a lot of fun, but it's almost sure they're going to win. Do you have any insight for us on this game, or is this going to be one of those we just move to the next one? Because there's probably a couple more of those coming.
Yeah, the only thing I really have to say is if you're desperate to pick a 15 over a 2, this is probably the most vulnerable one, just because how three reliant they are. So if they go cold, it can happen. But I'm not advising doing that. I'm just saying if you're desperate to, maybe if you get together like those guys, the UMBC alumni did, and got together and threw a bunch of money on UMBC to do it, and they did it. Like if you're doing something like that, this is the one I would lean to. But there's not much good happening the sports betting wise because those high numbers. I mean, Alabama could absolutely blow them out of the water. This could be tough, but uh, I'm not comfortable laying it. Not comfortable playing on the total either.
If Bama gets hot in this tournament, they'll win this whole thing. The way how fast they play and how many threes they shoot. If they get hot, they absolutely can. I think most people know that. Here's the thing I want to wrap up about this really before we move on to the next game is the sports books know that and are pricing Alabama that way on your futures markets. So you don't really have an edge there. So like as much as I would love to say, here's how we can make money knowing this fact, I think everyone else knows that. Like again, the way you make money off this is knowing something they don't know or seeing something they don't see, which is again why we kind of start off with the model and then we kind of see what else might they see in different way and whatnot because we got to find something different. But that's different from a bracket strategy. Jake, if you are in a bracket challenge with 10 people, you should pick the team you think is most likely to win. If you're in a bracket challenge with 200 people, I think you got to be looking at a team like Alabama. Why is that? Because people aren't going to be picking them because they're so volatile and they could absolutely lose in the first weekend. Like if it's Alabama St. Mary's, oh my goodness, what an interesting matchup that's going to be. And anything can happen with Alabama, like you said, if they go cold. And if you're in a bracket with 200 people, a challenge with 200 people, you're probably going to lose anyway. Who cares, right? But you pick a team like that who gets hot, you might be one of the few people who pick them. So they're kind of one of those high variance teams if you're thinking about bracket strategy and who you're picking to win it all. Of course, we'll pick them to advance past day one. Lipscomb and Iowa State, of course, we kind of talked about it earlier, that key Iowa State injury. Another situation with two teams with almost identical records, but obviously one of them much better than the other. That suffocating Iowa State defense, only outmatched by, Alabama's prowess on offense, basically, when you compare the two. We've got Iowa State winning 88% of the time by an average of about 14, books right at 14. So, Jake, any insight for how to handle Iowa State against Lipscomb, or is this kind of we're going to put a pin in that and talk about the injury news as we progress them further into the field?
Yeah. I advise keeping if you're an Iowa State fan or want to bet Iowa State, watch this game, watch all of it, because you want to see what the offensive game plan is without Gilbert uh, whatsoever. And I think that was the most clever thing TJ Alsobinger did, or whatever, not announcing that until after the field was announced. Because, I mean, the easy one to point back to is Kenyon Martin. When that year, Cincinnati far and away the best team all year, had the best resume, should have been the one seed, probably the one overall. Kenyon Martin breaks his leg in the Big East, whatever tournament, whatever conference they were in that tournament,
Honestly,
and
who knows with any teams anymore? We've
yeah,
literally completely lost the entire plot, but
yeah,
whatever.
all of a sudden they're a 2 seed because they like so you hold that back, get the best route. Absolutely brilliant move there by him. But yeah, watch this game, see what he does without Gilbert because
if
that's a big chunk of their offense gone.
Yeah, if only Florida State football could have figured that a couple years ago, and they could have at least gotten into the playoff, which they definitely deserved. I guess I'm frustrated from this standpoint when this stuff happens. They should be seated based off what they deserve, based off what they did. I don't care who like leave who's better to me, right? And the other people like me who are trying to figure this stuff out. Like that's our job, right? And that's the book's job, and that's not their job is not to figure out who's the better team and who's ready to play today. Their job is to reward the teams who had the best season and that's I don't know. It doesn't sometimes that's I don't know how we make it more complicated than that. But I don't want to get off on a rant. We're already going to be like 9 years of content on this as it is. Colorado State, Memphis. One of the other really interesting. You got two kind of clunkers here in these early Friday, but between the Baylor game, which might actually be almost over by the time this one starts, but we'll call it an early game. Between that one and this Colorado State Memphis game, a couple games that should be really close. We've got it at a dead heat 50-50. If you actually round up the decimals, we've got this at Colorado State minus 101. So slightly stuff possible more before they win, but I mean, it's such a coin toss. The books have it Colorado State minus 2.5, so the market's a little bit more favorable to Colorado State. The total on this one, the books are a little bit higher than the model as well. They're more in the upper 140s, we're more in the lower 140s. So much to talk about with this one, Jake. Where do you want to start?
Uh, First off, this is going to surprise everybody. I like Memphis.
Okay.
Um,
Given your comments in the previous life about Penny Hardaway, that is quite surprising.
I mean, think I feel like Tyrese Hunter's coming back, and add him to Haggerty. That team has got two exceptional guards that can both fill it up. I mean, Haggerty had 40 something in the semifinal game. Uh, they've beat teams that they're a solid team this year. Very interested to see what happens. And I think the Hunter is being priced out of this right now, and that's why you're seeing Colorado State. I also think it's a trendy one to help you get a leg up. But like kind of like I was saying with Michigan, I think you're almost by picking Memphis, you're almost on the other like the upset side of it. It's almost like these seats should be reversed. And I don't know. I think Memphis here. I like the total. Both are very offense heavy. I like leaning over, especially if Hunter plays. And I think if the Hunter announcement comes, when that comes, I think you see that line flip or get closer to pick him. I think it goes away from Colorado State because he's such a great player and adds so much to that team.
So this one's so fascinating to me, and one of the reasons we talk about, you don't always have to agree with the model. I think that the things that I hope you can agree with, viewer, that we don't disagree with is we don't disagree on some of the core mathematical principles, right? That if you have something that you think wins 60% of the time, it's okay to lay minus 140. But if you think it wins 55% of the time, you don't lay minus 140, right? These basic mathematical principles, right, are the types of things we can all agree on and trying to figure out how to be smart money. Now, that doesn't mean you always have to agree with the model's projection because it might be weighting things a little bit differently than you. Now, we have to be careful because the models are able to see a whole lot more data than our brains
Yeah.
can, which really helps. But that doesn't mean they're infallible. But I think it's interesting, Jake. You talked about two things that you like there, and it's interesting because at least right now, what the model is saying, everyone else is seeing what you see with regards to the total and going over, and that's bumping that total out. And what that's telling me, looking at this, is, oh, we'd like the over, but given where it's been bet up to, most of the value might be gone here as we approach 150, especially in a tournament game, especially in an early tournament game. Sometimes these first halves, man, there was one year several years ago where the first half unders went like 28-4 or something
Yeah.
insane. Yeah, those first 2 days. And uh, now at some point the books have kind of adjusted for that, but you just never know. So with some of these like that with the total, I'm thinking I get what you're saying, not much value. But what you're saying with the side, ooh, now the model say we've got some value there because you're saying, hey, I kind of think Memphis is being a little bit disrespected here. The model's saying 50-50. Boom, plus odds on Memphis got some value there. You take the 2.5 in case you think it's close. That's a personal preference right there. But either way, let me ask you, Jake, just since we're here, if we're taking Memphis, are you taking a money line plus points? Are we looking
I'm
for a
going full
number?
board on this one, money line.
Full money
I
line.
might come back and eat it, but I'm thinking Hunter's playing, and I'm operating that way until I hear otherwise. Uh, I think you're going to lose all the value in this game if you wait till that announcement.
Mm.
So I might not go heavy on this one. I might be a little lighter than my full unit, but uh, I think you got to get the plus odds on a good team when you can, and then if there's still a chance even with because it's a player based model and you've got it 50-50. So without Hunter, it's still a decent play. You add him in, I'm sure that
It's better
changes
than 50
everything.
50.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you're
then
absolutely
you're
right. You're absolutely right. It's a great point. Player based model. He is questionable at this point, and so because we don't know, we're it's not exactly like this, but more or less averaging two scenarios. Does he play or does he not play? And then when he doesn't play, well, the model does a lot of fancy calculation. It's not overly fancy. I just built it in like a day, but it's like kind of trying to figure out, whose roles what, how many guys are really participating. We take him out, who do we plug in? We can't just give him to the next best player, and I can't just all of a sudden give that guy the minutes. And so, how do the minutes trickle down with some maximums, et cetera? So, there's some math there. And it just says, here's what we think without. And so, yeah, like you said, if he plays, it's probably more Memphis minus one or two. If he doesn't, but more plus one or two. So right now, if we're assuming not, and he might, there's some value there. I'm going to pick Memphis here in the bracket. The reason why is because at least right now, and we're talking about this here, we're kind of telling people we think it makes sense to bet some plus money on Memphis, and so I'm going to pick Memphis here because I'm going to be rooting for Memphis. Because if we've got plus odds on Memphis, then I want to be rooting here for what I do there. That said, if you're in your own bracket, I don't think necessarily this is a coin. I mean, a slam dunk. I do think you're right though. You might actually gain a little bit by playing Memphis here because the 12-5 is so popular everyone's going to be taking Colorado State because they're favored. Like, you don't see that a lot. And so you might actually have a little bit of a plus expected value in your pools by taking Memphis, even though they can be flawed. And even though this Colorado State team is really good, uh, you know, we still think that Memphis is just, like you said, they're the better team. They've got too much talent to pass up at plus odds. And kind of the same idea. If everyone else is going to be on Colorado State, I'll just take them to the bracket and we'll hope that they can prove to everyone that they are the better team. Next thing will be Duke. Nothing to talk about there, of course. We can easily move them forward, depending on whoever they play out of the first four. Vanderbilt and St. Mary's. I alluded to the Alabama St. Mary's potential game. This would be a nice little preview of that scaled back. Vanderbilt is no Alabama, but they do play fast. They are better on offense, so it'd be a little bit of a taste of what might be to come. Jake, this was to me interesting. We've got St. Mary's -6 in this game. The market only has them at 3.5. Obviously, 3.5 is a yuck number. We prefer to wait for 3. But similar to that, we were at 133 versus the market at 136. So we're seeing a differential of about 3 points the same direction. We've kind of got this more St. Mary's 70-64, whereas the books have it more St. Mary's 70-67. You think that's just one basket, and I know it is. It's absolutely one basket, and that's why we talk about no model's perfect and nothing's right. We can't predict this. We don't know what no one does, right? But when you talk about an average prediction, 3 points, they're all credited to that one team. It's kind of interesting. Jake, do you think that we're a little high on St. Mary's? Are you a little high on St. Mary's with us, or are you maybe a little bit low on Vanderbilt, or how are you seeing it?
like I think the tail end of Vander's season here is coloring this a little bit. Because I mean they went through a stretch at the end. I've got it pulled up because this is one I was ready for. Uh, they went Auburn at Tennessee at Kentucky, Ole Miss at A&M, Missouri, Arkansas at Georgia, and Texas to finish the year with the SEC tournament. I mean they lost six of those, so they went 3-6, but they beat Texas A&M at Texas A&M. They got drilled by Kentucky, almost beat Tennessee, was hung in there with Auburn. The Texas game was close, and Arkansas blew them out of the water. And the teams that beat them and blew them out of the water uh, were speed and shooting and like some really good guard play. Like you've got Arkansas who can spread it out, can play fast, pressure defense. Kentucky spreads it out, shoots it, lights out. Those are the teams like Missouri was the surprise to me because that's how Missouri plays too, but that game was 97-93. So
Mm.
it's one of those that I think Vandy's getting a little undervalued, and I think Vandy is matchup wise, I think this is a great draw for them to have a chance. In my This might be one that I put a tiny bit on the money line, but at 3.5, I'm not trusting you. Like either Tim not laying it and I'm not plussing it, or choosing Vandy at the 6 number. I would definitely be taking Vandy. So if it gets closer, but I really like their coach. Bennington came from James Madison. He's very good. Makes excellent adjustments, and I mean they beat Tennessee at home. They gave Tennessee a heck of a game at Tennessee, and St. Mary's and Tennessee aren't that far apart in stylistic play. So I think he's got, and I mean same thing kind of with Auburn too. They're they're not that different, so he's ready for it. That's one of those toss up ones that I might just take a chance on because I think I want to get decent number as we get closer to tip with Vandy.
This one is, so fascinating to me because we're about to start talking about a lot more as we move further. We haven't had to yet, but we will. We will. What do you make of the SEC? Because I already said earlier, right? I'm not really concerned about if they win a bunch or lose a bunch and what that means or what. It's not that. I'm just saying we've only been seeing them beat up on each other. We know what they're not. The reason that they're rated so highly is because they did so well in the non-conference, and that was just a long time ago. And so, what the computers are trying to do is kind of remind us about that and be like, that's really the only way to differentiate conference tier strength. Otherwise, how do you do it? Because it's a closed system. Now you get a little bit with these. Now these systems aren't quite closed, right? Because you got too many. They're not playing everybody twice, but still, it's not easy. And so I think that's going to be a lot of the discussions. How do you feel about the SEC in general now that they're getting out of playing each other? How is that going to translate? Because you could take the one case and say now that we're playing teams that are slightly less athletic, slightly less good, or whatever that excels them, you could take some of this as they've just been beat up all season, and are they going to be able to actually kind of finish it out here in a little bit of a grueling run? So I think that's the interesting thing to debate here. With regards to our pick, I'm going to pick St. Mary's in the bracket. That's because I don't have odds to deal with.
Yep.
I'm going to trust that the model has them as the better team. Um, and so I think that's probably the smarter bracket play. But what I will say, and Jake, I'm glad you brought this up because I want our viewers to be thinking about this. This is another great bracket strategy thing. When I see a game like that, and I hear what you just said, and I think matchup wise, that I think there's some value on Vandy. It's kind of the opposite of that tech situation we talked about earlier, where we're like, I'm on it right up until the number of the model says maybe even a little bit further, and then it's so far you're like, crap. Now what do I do? And that's fine. Sometimes it's just telling us to stay away, which I think is what that's doing here. Is it's saying 3.5's not enough, in this case. But if you were to get the 5 or the 6, or take the money line or whatever, knowing that we're thinking that way, that this matchup, this upset's possible from a bracket strategy, I'm now looking at that saying, I don't want to take them any further because I already might be losing this one. And so let's not get too risky. Obviously, I was probably going to advance Alabama anyway, but we already talked about them being high variant. So now I'm looking at this saying, we've got a pretty high variance bracket shaping up here in the East. I don't know if you could see where this is going, people, but it should get kind of dicey there with us looking at it going, wait, what did we get ourselves into? Because it could be some wild scenes. Moving forward, of course, one more TBD game in the afternoon. It'll be against Ole Miss, who will, we will discuss the play-in games of some of these games against the 6-11s, of course. When we know more about them, because those are more worthy of discussion than the 116. So we have this one, this 6-11, and then the one that we will get to later, the Texas and Xavier 11, I guess that one would have been on Thursday. So we will make sure to come back to those. But for now, we will wrap up the afternoon session with Grand Canyon and Maryland. A Grand Canyon team, Jake, you and I have loved to back for years now. Unfortunately, Sidelines got them winning about 1 out of 7 times in this one, so not quite as much as we would hope for a team we've liked to back that's been good to us. It's been undervalued against the Maryland team that the model's really high on. Has number 10 overall. Really strong defense. Folks, there should be points in this one. This one could be a fun game with the pace these two teams play. The big question for me is that Maryland defense and how good it is. Grand Canyon's better on defense than offense. Is this going to be pace with teams hitting shots? depending on who hits them, that could really tell us a lot. Or is this going to be the defenses survive and it's just a bunch of up and down stoppages? This game could get really weird, Jake. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, I feel like this has got a bunch of weird stretches in it, or things like that.
How often
Um,
do you? We talked about it earlier, like with St. John's. Like you don't see a lot of this with faster pace, better defenses, and now we've got two of them playing each other.
it's crazy. I think this was a very interesting matchup the committee put together, and I think it's a bit unfortunate because no matter who wins, I'm sad that the other team lost because I
Yeah.
really like what Maryland's doing. I like Derek Queen. He's fantastic. They've got the highest scoring starting five in the nation. They keep bragging about, but that means your bench is not great because you're here at a 4 seed. Um,
Yeah, and they were great to us at the start of the season too. I mean, we picked up real early on them that they were a really good team. They had a lot of talent and everything. Which, like you said, it's that you have to like backing a team that's done you well all season. You know?
Yeah, and I mean Grand Canyon, like Bryce Drew's excellent coach, excellent teams. Still got Foster there. That's an incredible guy. They both teams have an emergency guy like the 911. I need a bucket. Here's Derek Queen. Here's Foster. Uh, it's going to be fantastic to watch. Unfortunately, I think Maryland wins this. I think that is where this game goes. Like 1-7 feels about right for Grand Canyon, but the way it doesn't happen is foul trouble in Maryland.
Mm.
And
Depth.
that you start bringing into that depth, that Grand Canyon wins that depth battle. I think they're more even, and I think there's a bigger drop off there with Maryland, especially if it's Derek Queen or Julian Reese. That really takes a big weapon out of uh, Maryland's bag. But I don't see it. I don't see that happening too much enough that that Maryland can't recover.
Yeah, like I said, we've loved Grand Canyon. They've been great to us. Unfortunately, it's not the best matchup for them. But Jake, something there that you said, and I want to put a pin in it and come back to it. And I want us to kind of be thinking this is a good bracket strategy for all these teams. You made a comment there. You said the Maryland talked about their depth, and you said kind of the way it goes south for them is when their depth's going to get challenged. And so then what that first sparks for me then is, okay, what team are they going to face that's going to really challenge that depth? Who is built to really do that? And so as we start thinking about their path through, like I said, we're going to put a pin on it as we march through there and see who is that team that is like that. Who do they want to avoid? Who do they want to see that sort of thing? And kind of for all the teams, if we're thinking about advancing them, especially past the Sweet 16, we really need to be thinking about how are they going to get screwed up? Like I know we talked about earlier, just recently here with the Vanderbilt St. Mary's thing. Like, oh, that's a matchup thing, right? And so be thinking about who might have a short exit just because the one thing that's going to cost them as a team that should be able to make a run just didn't go well for them, of course. So we'll be thinking about that with Maryland. With regards to the betting part of this, we've got this at -12 for Maryland. The spread is actually 10.5. We might have a slight lean to the under, but with a total, I have no idea what's going to happen. This seems like one of the higher variance totals. Could get to 170, wouldn't shock me. Could be 125, and I'd be like, I mean, yeah, I know there's a lot of pace, but these defenses are legit, and the offense is like behind. So I'm not touching a total. What about 10.5 for you? Is that something you can lay with the Maryland team that's been good to us, or take with a Grand Canyon team? Maybe we think hangs in there. What
Yeah.
do you got?
I don't want the hook. So I will play Maryland at 9.5, maybe 10,
Okay.
but then I want 12.5 before I start playing Grand Canyon. So it's right now it's in no man's land for me,
Okay.
and I'm hoping to watch it move, but I got a feeling it stays right there.
Hey, there's a reason we do this on Monday, right? Trying to make sure that we can at least have the opportunity to find and see that movement, take advantage of it if it exists, and not have to force numbers, too early or too late in the week. Starting off the night slate, Norfolk State and Florida. Norfolk State, I feel like has to be a win for them to avoid. Um, Dayton, they've been one of the better teams in the MEAC for the last several years now. They've been one of the teams that's been able to avoid Dayton from, the HBCU. So kudos to them for that ability. The sad thing, of course, is you go to Dayton, you get a chance to get a win. They will not really have a chance to get a win here. We've got this at Florida winning 97% of the time. That might even be a little low. At some point, we're out to the point of the distribution where there's just not a lot happening. So it gets kind of weird. But Florida, of course, is really, really good. I don't need to tell you that. We've got them winning by an average of 26.5. The spread's 28.5. Total in the low 150s. Jake, I don't think there's anything here from a betting standpoint. There's nothing here from a survivor standpoint. There's nothing here from a bracket standpoint. But Norfolk State, congrats on avoiding Dayton. I'm going to give you a win in my heart for that because you
Yeah.
won by having to avoid it, unfortunately. That's all we've
That's a
got.
terrible reward because
It's a terrible
Florida is
word.
playing.
Absolutely, and we are going
Ooh,
to talk more about Florida in part two as we move forward through this bracket. Troy and Kentucky. We've got this Kentucky winning about 4 to 5 times by an average of just south of 10. The market's just north of 10, so 9.5 versus 10.5 there. So we would, say for the most part, not really much edge there. Doesn't mean there isn't one. Again, the model's not pointing us in the right direction. Well, the model is pointing is, Jake, I'm curious. I want to start here, and then we'll talk more about the spread and can Troy even hang around, keep this interesting? Maybe pull the upset. The market's got this total at about 153. We're at 146. The model's high on both these defenses. Kentucky does play fast, but the model would lean under. Is that a crazy idea, or semi crazy, or a smart idea?
I
How,
kind
how
of
are you seeing the
I
total
kind of like it because I mean, Troy's a good team coming out of the Sun Belt. It's a decent mid-major conference. Um,
with maybe the best or worst conference tournament? I don't know. It's one or the other.
that's what I don't know what the heck is happening. Uh, People are trying to make sure their best teams make it in and doing all sorts of weird stuff to guarantee it happens.
Can't blame them.
Uh, yeah,
It's
I
not
know. I don't
illegal.
either. Like because it's a lot of money to win
Yeah,
to make it to that next round.
yeah.
Um,
Give yourself a chance.
but which is what's crazy with the SEC getting 14 teams in. That is it's a
Yeah,
lot of money to a conference that's already.
swimming in it.
Yeah. Anyway, so I like the under because Troy, like we've long said for many years on the show, less less possessions, more variance that helps you upset. So really like that. I like that idea. They already want to play it slower than what Kentucky
Mhm,
does,
mhm.
um, especially with this being kind of where are they playing at? Totally drawing a blank where this one's at. It's Midwest. I don't know. I can't
Milwaukee.
remember. Milwaukee. They'll have a decent. I mean, Kentucky travels. This one thing. As much as I hate Kentucky, their fans are some of the best fans. They love basketball. They'll just sit and watch basketball.
But
Like it.
but the question almost isn't about will Kentucky travel. It's will Kentucky travel relative to will Illinois travel. Relative to if Xavier makes it, will Xavier travel? Relative to if Texas makes it, will Texas travel? Because if you have fans of Xavier or
Yeah,
Texas or Illinois in the crowds, they
or
will be
Troy fans.
pulling for Troy.
Yeah, no, I've lived that. I
I
can't
have
speak.
two.
I can't speak for Texas Xavier. Well, I would bet Texas Xavier not traveling as much because that's a quick turnaround to find that.
Yeah.
Um, Illinois probably travels just as
Well,
well,
the
but
benefit for Xavier traveling is if they're going to Dayton, that's not really much travel. From
yeah,
that's hour and a half, I think. If I'm got my Ohio geography correct, we're right next door. I don't think Texas is traveling to Dayton. I think maybe a few will for the experience
uh,
because it's fun to go. I think Texas would be waiting on do we make it and do we go to the other one? But I don't even think a lot of. I think it's really about Illinois for the most part. Is Illinois being it's not Chicago, but also any Illinois alum in Chicago to drive to Milwaukee's an hour.
I'll skip a jump.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, it's even less about the students and less about the faculty and less about the like locals at the university. More about Chicago is a big place, and I know there's a lot of Kentucky fans there, but there's a lot of Illinois grads there,
Yeah,
and I think that's got to be probably 50-50 Illinois Kentucky fans, right? And at that
yeah,
point, that'll at
yeah.
least help Troy out a little bit that they'll have all those Illinois fans pulling for
Yeah.
them.
Troy goes on a run a little bit. Those could like that's why I like the under because Kentucky's three ball dependent. Could get a little Troy going, and then all of a sudden those shots don't go. Then you've got also the injury with Butler and Jackson Robinson. Like how much is Pope going to push them versus like play them get ahead, whatever they need to get ahead, and just kind of sit back. Like
Or let's say they get out early 20, start
yeah,
pulling them earlier, and then that allows us to chip away and get us a little sleepy backdoor cover that unless you were betting on it, you didn't even know existed because you were like, whatever, it's 14 with 5 minutes to go, nobody cares, right?
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean that's exactly kind of what I'm looking at there. When I want to see that, I'll probably live bet the spread there because I'm not sure how hurt
Mhm,
Butler and Jackson
mhm,
Robinson are, but they were hurt enough to not play in the SEC tournament. That might have cost them a seed line based on how that resulted. But
mhm.
I really like the under here. I think that's a smart play.
So we like the under. We're going to move Kentucky out of the bracket. I don't think that's real. As much as we, and it'd be great if Troy wins. I'd love to be wrong because again, we love upsets, but that'd be kind of a crazy choice. Jake, let me ask you then. Model says 9.5. You already kind of talking about live betting and seeing that, so we know we know we want to see that. Aside from that, I want to talk about correlated betting here, right? Because in some cases, the dog and the under are not correlated, and that's just based off of strategy, styles, etc. But a lot of cases they are. It's more common than not, and in this case is absolutely one of them. You've already outlined it very well for the viewer, so they have a great idea of why that's the case. But knowing that they're correlated means we're more likely to bet both, win both, bet both, lose both. Knowing we don't want to do that, I'm curious what I'm thinking in my head. I'm just kind of throw something out there is maybe if you do a unit on the under, you only do a half unit on the spread to try to minimize. Does that seem about right?
That's like if you want to play that before it starts, before the
Mm.
game goes, yeah, that's like how I would treat this. This
Or in your
the
case, you're saying I'm just going to hold off on the spread because I know I want that live spread. I know I don't want to be over doubly invested. But then
yeah.
you can maybe even make a full unit bet based off how things are playing out because then that correlation, it's not that the correlation doesn't exist, but depending on when you wait, like let's say you bet it at a point in the first half where let's say after 10 minutes it's the sleepiest start ever and it's 15-3, right? Well, the live under at that point might be 20 points lower than so you might kind of already have a almost winner there, and then you don't have to worry about it. And then you might say, oh, and because the slow start from Troy, I'm getting 19 and a half points or something. And so you have some better options there too.
That's what I'm hoping for, something like that. Like I'm going to try to get the choice spread when Kentucky goes on a run where they hit three or four threes in a row or get to the foul line a lot. That's what I'm going to try to hit the choice spread, but off the get go, I'm not touching it right now.
And
But
and I just want to make sure everyone's aware, right? We've all about transparency here. If you're watching this still with us at the, I don't even know how long we're going to be, Mark. You know this about us, but I think it's important to have a plan like that in some of these situations or have a plan not to live bet it. And folks, that doesn't mean it always plays out. Sometimes it does and it's great and we laugh about it and we brag about it and I played out to play. Even actually, I think I brag more when it doesn't because then it's really funny to be like, oh, it played out just like I thought. And we all know it did, right?
yeah,
But the point being, I want to make sure you viewer you understand. There's a lot of times you have a plan and then nothing happens and you just don't bet it, and that's okay.
yeah.
And so if it
There's a
doesn't,
ton of basketball going
ton of
on.
basketball. And that's the thing is we're going to have some plans here. We're trying to outline some plans from you. We'll have more plans over on Discord, of course. And if it doesn't come to fruition, it doesn't, and that's fine. We don't push, we don't press, we don't deviate from it. We know when we're firing, we know when we aren't, and that's kind of the way that we want to stay disciplined. So some really good discussion there. New Mexico and Marquette, another one of these early evening Friday games. We've got this pretty close to 50-50. Marquette winning by an average of 2.5, winning 57% of the time. It's about 4 out of 7. The books are a little bit higher on Marquette, both with regards to how many points they'll score and with how much they'll win by. Jake, a fascinating game to talk about. Close should be, the way you'd play this betting and the way you play it in your bracket, probably pretty similar. So a lot of overlap here in this discussion. I'll let you go wherever you want to go.
This is the game I'm most torn on, if I'm honest.
Mm,
I really want to take New Mexico. I don't like how Marquette looked at the end of the year. At the
mm.
same time, they took St. John's overtime at St. John. Was it? I can't remember if that was at Madison or if
It
that
was at
was at.
it was at Madison. It was a quasi home game.
Yeah. And
It was like their 12th game there of the year.
found money by the guy who hit the shot to win for St. John's, and then they played them absolutely terrible in the tournament, and which was in the same gym, and gets beat by 16. Like I don't know, the defense isn't quite there this year. I mean, like they take advantage of bad teams, but I mean Villanova beat them 80-56 on their court not that long ago. I just how wild is it that father and son both got teams in here that are, I mean, I don't know. I'm doing everything I can to not jump hard on New Mexico. Um, just waiting to see how this goes because I'm probably going to end up on New Mexico more than I want. But I just don't think Marquette finished the year good. I think that matters how he came in down the stretch, losing to UConn twice, St. John's twice, uh, lost to Villanova in games that weren't close. I don't know. I
And I
don't.
and I had it backwards, by the way. That was a home game for Marquette that they beat St.
Uh,
John's in, and then overtime, and that matters too, right? When you're at
yeah,
your home arena versus a
yeah.
neutral court. So
It,
um,
it's one that the more I talk, the more I'm into New Mexico, so I'm going to shut up about it.
Well, you're getting 4 with New Mexico, so my question is same question: split money line. How you feeling about that? Is it
I'm
reasonable to choose them in a bracket as well?
It's definitely reasonable to take him in the bracket. Like that's one that I like to do, and I think it might slide under a lot of people's radars as well. Because Marquette's a known name, been good the last few years. New Mexico's not really. They didn't even make it to the conference tournament final. Um,
And even we've
so
watched some of these New Mexico teams, even when they've been really good, they really are under the radar. They're really underrated. They're really underseeded. When they're seeded as a 5, they should have been a 4 or a 3, right? They half their games are on Mountain West Network, which is like I can only get on like my iPad,
yeah,
or they're really late. And so yeah, we've seen this a lot. This New Mexico team has had times when they've been really good and people didn't even care. So now that they're not even that good, people really don't care. I have to
yeah,
assume, right? Which is sad
yeah.
because they're pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean Donovan Dent is worth watching. He's incredible, and then I think it's Nelly Junior Joseph or something like that. Uh, very, very, very good players that should get more love than they do, but they'll get it here. I'm going all money line here when I make my play. Um, Smart money would split it because you're not as confident as I am, but um, um, I'm buying New Mexico here.
Hey, scared money don't make money, right? And I say that half in jest because again, we do teach responsibility here, right? We don't want to go crazy, but it is. We talk about this all the time, right? It's a lot of personal preference, and I ask because I just never know what you might say about a different game, or ask because you have the same questions, right? About a game that makes someone like, because really at the end of the day, and you've heard me say this if you've been here, you have to just be comfortable with whatever you're doing, and that's what I want you. You need to be comfortable with it, and so if you're more comfortable with the money line because you're thinking, because I love plus odds, being able to not being able to win 50% and make money is incredible. I love that, right? But with the spreads, if you're playing a little bit safer, whatever it is, however you feel that you want to do it, just be comfortable with it. So, if there's anything that someone says here that leans you view or one way or the other, great. I'm seeing this close to 50-50 as well. I'll go to Mexico as well. I think in a bracket, I really think it's a toss up. I think you'll probably get more value on New Mexico, as you mentioned. I think Marquette's probably slightly more likely to win. Um, but again, I said it before, 7-10, it doesn't really matter for the most part, unless you think they're going to beat the 2 or that the 2 really is weak. And we've seen the 2 struggle at times in recent years. So if you think a 2 is really weak, that really the matter. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter on that. So that's why we spend most of our time there talking about it from a betting perspective. Last question was from total markets low 150s. We're upper 140s. Do you see this as a game that's going to be more played in the 140s, getting close to 150, or do you see this as a game that's more in the 150s and might even get towards 160?
I think we're going to end up towards 160. Marquette's defense hasn't been there for them the last part of the year. And I mean, Shaka Smart is not about to change his entire strategy to slow teams down. He's going to want to still play that chaos kind of basketball. And that's going to lead to that's why you see like the Xavier game 89-87, St. John's 86-84. I mean, Providence 82-52. The Villanova loss, they gave up 81. They're a lot of high scoring, especially towards the end of the year here. So I think as good of an offensive team as New Mexico is, I think that's going to push that total up. Not sure if I'm playing the over where it's sitting now
It's
because
high.
it's high. You never know how the new gym, new feel, extra adrenaline, and everything from the
Yeah.
tournament game plays out. And with you're getting closer to 160, a 2 or 3 minute stretch of uh, shots that should go in, not going in, not falling down, some missed free throws or something, uh, that can really kill you. So
So
I'm not sure if I'm playing the over, but I'm definitely not playing under.
so viewer caveat, of course, if the under hits, right, we aren't trying to say we know what's going to happen, right? I'm not. We don't know. Anything can happen because coaches can change strategy, or one coach's strategy they could plan to go in one way and one affects. I mean, we don't know, right? There's a lot happening, right? Teams get hot, teams get cold, overtimes happen, whatever, right? But goodness, Jake, I really hope for your sake you're right because I love the way you said that with just such confidence, right? It was just like this one's gonna be a high score. I just the way you said that in your explanation, I loved it. It was great. So I really hope you're on that one. And I like that you explained that like that. And again, this is why these are discussions we have on Discord. We'll have more of them the more you want them. But this is why when we talk about disagreeing with the model, again, there's no model's perfect. And in this case, why do you disagree with it, right? Because again, it's not the math that you disagree with. It's something about what component is being picked up on each team. And when you're talking about, kind of more of a recent trend, and you say, hey, I'm not going to say that my model's picking up on recent trends perfectly, right? It may not be. And so you're kind of seeing that and saying, hey, the model's telling us there might be value here, but knowing this, that doesn't do it for me. Now maybe it tells me that I've lost out on the value, like you were saying. I'm kind of wondering, right? But maybe it still doesn't. Maybe again, it's just kind of seeing it a little bit differently than you. So those are great discussions and great things to be thinking about. And so we are going to be. It kind of sounds like an over or pass, depending on where the numbers, how comfortable you feel with it, because we know it's high, we know we're losing value, we just don't know how much we've lost at this point. The model thinks a lot, but the model's not perfect, right? And then we're going to be on New Mexico money line here, thinking they got a chance to pull the upset. Surprised we didn't talk more about Marquette given their history, but here we are. Last game in this slot, Akron, Arizona. Arizona wins this 9 out of 10 times according to the model by an average of 15 and a half. Market's got it at 14, so maybe if you want to lay it again. At this point, this number, it's a lot tougher because who knows what's going to happen total. Kind of the same thing. It's correlated with the spread. Does it stay a game? Does Akron kind of hang in there because their offense is better than their defense? Do they push the tempo? To me, the question is all about tempo. The market's got this closer to 170. We're more in the low 160s, but like, what is Akron going to do in this game in order to try to give themselves, a chance against an Arizona team that looks like it might kind of be peaking here, playing some really good basketball on the stretch, knowing that Arizona's going to take that pace and say, yay, this is exactly what we want to do anyway. And so if Akron really speeds up and goes with it versus if they try to pull the upset and goes that's to me the big question, what they're going to do. What do you see happening?
I think it's how long and how hard does Arizona play? Because I mean, if you start looking at the non-conference, like Akron is a good team. They're the best team
Mm-hmm.
in the MAC by far. Um,
Which sadly this year is just not saying as much as it would have
yeah,
said 3 years
yeah,
ago.
that's where I was going. Because
Yeah,
I mean, if you look back at they played at St. Mary's, gave up 87 to St. Mary's. I mean, that's hard to do.
that's hard
Um,
to do.
they gave up 74 to Yale. I mean, they're giving up 100 points in a few handful of games. They're scoring over 100. Like it's how hard does Arizona play and how long and how to make you comfortable in that. Because if you think they play 30-ish minutes at the pace that Arizona typically plays, I think over. But I think, well, maybe 30 is wrong, but like 35, getting closer to that, like the last quarter of the game. It, I don't know, because Akron's going to want to play fast, so they're always going to try to score. So they're going to be pushing the pace all 40 minutes because they're not going to change how they play. But it's how far does Arizona go, and I'm not comfortable one way or the other because I know as soon as I bet the under, it's going to be a 5 point game at halftime, and Arizona's going to have to come out and just whack
Just light it up.
throughout the second half, and they're going to hang 100 on me. Or if I bet the over, it's going to be 30 point game at halftime, and Arizona's just pulling
Just gonna
everybody. Like
sleepwalk.
Caleb Love doesn't see the floor in the
Yeah.
second half. Like I just know whatever way I go on this game will be wrong, so I'm just not going to touch it.
These are the games from watching them too. You're kind of like, I kind of want to keep an eye on this because if it gets interesting, it's going to be interesting, but also it might not even get remotely interesting. The last thing I want to say about Akron, I think is just interesting, and I could just see this. Kid Palm does a great job of on his website of how he color codes the teams and their seeds and stuff, and so it's just a great display. So I don't have this for mine. I can't easily look at this, but if you look at the teams that made the tournament according to Ken Palm's ratings, which are very solid for sure, very good, the bottom six teams that made it as automatic bids all got 16 seeds. And so you'd say they were in alignment with that. The next worst was Montana as a 14 seed. The next four worst were 15. So take away Montana, and the committee is line by line. Then you had that 114. The next worst is 14. The next worst is Akron, and the next worst is another 14. It does kind of make you think Akron there at that 13 is getting maybe a little bit of the benefit of the doubt of coming from a MAC conference that has been stronger in years past. And in that case, that makes me think they might be a little bit overseeded. Here's the thing though. The seeding part doesn't have anything to do with betting. So unfortunately, I can't say that's going to give us a betting edge because we saw earlier a 12 seed favored over a 5, so it's not going to affect the market at all what where the committee puts these teams, so it doesn't unfortunately
Do you think sometimes
balance.
they seed? Because I've always long thought this they overseed Akron and put them at a 13 to make their St. Mary's and Yale seeds better, to feel better about. Like
I
it's a
think
long,
it's
it's
I
a
think it's
conspiracy
possible.
I've had. Like, okay, if we're valuing St. Mary's this much, then this team has to be valued better. Like because
Absolutely.
of this.
And
Otherwise, we get weird questions and
well, and I think that there's two ways that can happen from a psychology standpoint. That can happen intentionally, and it can also happen subconsciously, where you don't even realize the mental gymnastics you're playing, but you are subconsciously valuing different things and trying to make your brain a logical system make sense. And that's the thing. Last thing I want to say here before we move on is when you think about computer rating systems, when you think about seedings and tournaments, right? Both of them aren't going to be logical. And that's what I think people struggle with because people want everything to make sense. But you literally cannot do this without having one team ranked below another team that beat them and probably beat them handily. And you can't even come up with rules to solve that because if you come up with, well, we'll bump them if they're next to each other. Well, what about when there's 360 teams? Oh, well, if they're within whatever percentage. Okay, you're going to come up with some arbitrary cut point that's going to screw everything up and then end up in a broken world or these things with the seedings, right? So I think the problem is we can't acknowledge our own the absurdity of when humans are involved in sports and there's all these different things happening that we cannot make a system where it's like all perfectly logical, but our brains try to make it make sense, and so that's when we do these gymnastics with ourselves and do this because we want it to make sense, even though we should just give up on that mission. But anyway, uh, almost there, folks. Night games. We got one TBD, Illinois, of course. We will talk more about that situation later. UConn and Oklahoma will play. UConn wins this 2/3 of the time. UConn, really the difference in this is their offense being better than Oklahoma's. A very different style of pace, but the total, according to the model and sports books, along with the spread, all pretty identical, right in that UConn winning by 4 or 5 range. With a total in the mid to upper 140. So the model's not helping us out, Jake. How would you play Oklahoma and UConn?
I'm going to back UConn. I'm going to trust Hurley when he says he's the best coach out there. I mean, it's hard to argue against it, but sometimes what's the old saying, "Pride comes before the fall." This kind of seems what has happened to him all year. I'm going to say put your money on the table. Let me see it. I think they'll get this um, double digits because Oklahoma's a good team. They've got some good players. Fear's incredible, but they sometimes just disappear. It's happened many a time throughout the SEC league tournament and stuff. They just totally disappear on one end of the floor, forget to go for a half. And UConn's experience, they're experienced-ish. They've got some real talent. Like a lot of the reason they're as low as they are is that long stretch Liam McNeely wasn't playing. He's back. That's where you see UConn a little bit more on the rise than they were. Uh, I think that they're going to not shock isn't the right word, but kind of surprise Oklahoma with. It's not going to feel like a true 8-9. It's going to feel a little bit more where UConn's underseeded, almost like they were 2 years ago because they had a weird stretch, and Oklahoma is seeded correctly and just a kind of unfortunate draw.
And that was, I remember we were all over UConn on that one because I think we had them as the number one team in the country long before the tournament started,
And they're
but they
what,
had to
4
be
seed?
seeded. They had to be seeded
Yeah.
lower, like you said, because they did have that weird stretch. And so it was one of those where I was like, yeah, good luck all these other teams like that. You're playing a 4 seed. No, you're playing a 1 that just. And again, they've seeded. That's where they should have been seeded, but it's just
Yeah.
unfortunate for the rest of the world at that point. So we'll take UConn here 2 out of 3 again. Whoever wins this probably loses to Florida, so it probably doesn't matter too much there. Bryant and Michigan State, a game where Michigan State almost assuredly going to win. We've got it by 21. The market's a little bit less. Market, maybe thinking Michigan State, lets off the gas a little bit potentially here. Also, the market's got the total a little bit higher at 151. We've got it at 145 and a half. So some definite discrepancies here. Obviously, there's nothing to talk about with regards to a bracket challenge on this one, but with regards to the betting angles here, the model would say lay the points with Michigan State or go under. Does either one of those appeal to you, or is this a situation where You think the 215 is just messing with the model and its ability to figure out how the end of the game is going to go?
Look, if you were one of the handful of people that watched the show when I took Michigan State, um, when I did it all by myself, you see my opinion on Michigan State. I think both make sense. I think their defense is very good. They're shooting the three ball better than they have been. So I think anything under 20 is a decent lay here because I think uh, that three ball starts going and it keeps going and uh, their defense, their depth will just wear down Bryant. I mean, that's going to be the biggest difference is the depth, because schools like Bryant just do not have as many players as uh, Michigan State has. They could just pull number one recruits off the bench, like Xavier. I don't know if he's number one, might have been number three, but off the bench, like he's a almost 7 foot guy that can shoot the three ball. Like it's hard to do when you're at a school as small as Bryant. Richardson and Akins are great. Fears is a good point guard. Just Michigan State will pull away. They will handle their business, and then I think it goes under because I think they get away early in the second half, and it's just foot off the gas because Izzo knows what it takes to get through a tournament, and he's not going to risk dumb stuff happening.
So I'm going to say then maybe first half under and
Yeah,
full game cover. And that way we don't have to potentially root against ourselves in the second half in case there's some weird, they need points, but we don't want points kind of thing.
yeah.
And that first half number's gonna be low, but like you said, Michigan State's defense is really good. Real quick follow up for you, Bryant team total under. Would that be something you'd also consider to that if you like Michigan State in the under?
Yeah, I'd consider. I need to look at it. I hadn't looked at it from that perspective yet,
Okay.
but uh, it's definitely something I would consider. The one caveat that you worry about is, say, Michigan State's up 25 late in the second half. Does Bryant get a few buckets off some walk on sub players that screw you on that?
Yeah, yeah, that's always a concern, and that's kind of why I mentioned the first half under too, because you could then at least maybe try to mitigate that a little bit. Uh, the Bryant team total, according to the model, would be 62. The implied team total right now would be about 67. So you'd have a pretty good little,
Yeah, I
uh,
like that under.
yeah, pretty good little under
I
there.
don't
'Cause
think they're getting a 70.
yeah.
So
So
that
at that point, you're just having to worry about a couple of those high 60s and
yeah.
and decent chance to win. So a lot of ways we can play that one. Last one here for Friday, Liberty and Oregon. Then we'll have a quick loop back around for the play-in games. But Liberty and Oregon, this one up in Seattle. So again, not one I gave Oregon any home court edge, but one where I do think it is nice for them to at least play so close to home, winning 7 out of 10 times according to the model by an average of six. Books have it 6.5, so pretty close. Right around the same total too in the upper 130s. Jake, how are we handling the last 5-12 of the opening round?
From a bracket standpoint, I really kind of like Liberty.
Mm.
They're a very solid team that has done in the past, and Oregon is not that good. Um, they're a good team and they're solid, but teams that can really guard and play good defense, like you saw against Michigan State, took took their one of their best players out. I think he had 2 points with like 8 minutes left in the game before he threw up some random shots that went in. I'm not sure if Liberty can do that from like a betting standpoint. There's a little bit more degree of confidence I need in Liberty before I start taking them. But from a bracket standpoint, I think it's a decent pick if you want to go with it. From a spread standpoint, I'm not sure what I'm doing here yet because I like Liberty. I think they have a good chance to win the game. But at the same time, Oregon is a very solid team. That Nate Biddle, that guy can really do some damage, and I'm not sure if Liberty's ready for him. So if he's going, he's a big man that can shoot the three ball, decent enough that you have to respect it, and has the old man YMCA game, which is fun to watch. When guys like that, like that's what Jokic does, right? I'm not saying this guy's Jokic, but he's got that style of game. He's a good passer too, so doubling him is also risky. Um,
That's what that big dude from Indiana State was doing last
yeah,
year that
yeah,
got everyone's attention this
yeah.
time of year.
very very much just like him. Maybe at a little more efficient level, uh, but can they get him the ball? I don't know because that's how you stop that from a big guy. When your big guy is your best player, it's unfortunately it's easy to take away unless your name's Edie and you're 8 foot tall. You pressure the guards, you make it hard to get to them, and that's kind of what Michigan State did. There was times when Oregon went on a run when they were able to get to him, but when they can't get the ball to him, he can't make the decisions or the moves that he needs. So, from a bracket standpoint, I'm very confident with going Liberty. In my bracket, I'm taking Liberty.
All right. Well, this is my
Uh,
bracket. I'm taking Oregon,
yeah,
but I'm doing it for a
yeah.
specific reason, and that is I don't like to fade Dana
You
Altman
want,
too much in
yeah,
March. It's just the thing.
yeah,
That's just a me thing. You know, you do you. And so I'm gonna
yeah.
pick them here to win this one simply because, like, I'm with you. They absolutely could lose. They've had some really odd games this year that I've just caught the score of and been like, I didn't see that one coming. And I feel like I've said that a lot about them this year. And they usually I feel like round into a stronger form, but then at the end, I still kind of had some questions. So I don't really know what to make of this team at all. But I'll at least give one win because if they make a run and I pick them to lose in the first round against Nate Altman, I would feel really bad. So uh, I'll take them to win this one.
But I mean, the Liberty team. If you like McNeese and you're doubting the choice we made there, this Liberty team beat McNeese on a neutral site at the beginning of the year. Um, I mean that tells you where the talent level of this team is at the
Yeah.
coaching level. Like it's it's a good team that you probably didn't catch much of throughout the year. I wish they weren't going out as playing the late game out west like that.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate for them.
Again, in a kind of home game ish, half it may not even really,
Yeah.
but whatever. A friendlier environment for Oregon. There will be a lot of Arizona fans there as well. Will the Arizona fans cheer for Oregon? I don't think
I don't think they're a
so.
rivalry, but
I don't know. That
yeah.
got weird. The whole Pac-12 thing got weird. Like, which schools are still rooting for the other schools? I don't know. I think they're all still rooting for Washington State and Oregon State because they all feel bad for what they did to them. But I don't know beyond that. It's
Yeah.
complicated. Um, so, but at least, like I said, the closer child for Oregon there. With regards to the two games we haven't touched yet, the play-in game, SDSU UNC here getting to play Ole Miss. UNC is 4 or 5 point favorite. Models kind of in line with that. Quick, hot second. North Carolina should win, is more likely to win according to both the market and the model. Do they win? Yes or no?
Yep.
Okay, North Carolina wins. So then we're picking between North Carolina and Ole Miss in the 6-11. What is our take on that one?
No, I think North Carolina continues the trend,
Mm-hmm.
getting a team from the play into second round. I think Ole Miss is a very vulnerable sixth seed um, that plays well. Love their coach Chris Beard, great defense, but the speed that North Carolina is going to bring to them and get going. The way they finished the end of the year, I mean, people say what you want about North Carolina, and I've said a lot, and I think they did not deserve to be in. You can't say, hey, quad one is the route to go and go 1-14 or whatever they went, and say, okay, you're in. Like it's one of those you want to reward scheduling, but man, you got to do something with it. You can't just be
Yeah.
Norfolk schedule all the top 25 teams, go over 25 and be like, we deserve an out at large
Which
bid.
again goes
Like,
back to my point. You cannot create a logical system
yeah,
because if you do come up with a system that you really like, there will be one or two exceptions that do not follow that, and then you have a choice to make. Do you stick with
yep,
your logical system, or do you then play mental gymnastics to maneuver things around to get what makes sense in your brain? Like, that's the problem. It's impossible to do this, for the record. I
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, but I think the way North Carolina finished the year, I
mean,
mean,
yeah.
they came back and should have beat Duke without Cooper Flag
Mm.
in the tournament, but they played an excellent first half against
And
Duke at
Duke
home.
without Cooper Flag, TM trademark, I guess, right? Still a very good team. It's top
Yeah,
five for sure. I think I still had them top three, maybe even top two. It's kind of without them, still kind of rounding air up the top. Still very, very, very good, right? It's
yeah,
not like
yeah.
they're a pushover without them.
No, it's one of those that I would definitely feel comfortable backing North Carolina in both spots. I think that goes counter to a lot of the information out there, but that's where I'm sitting.
All right, and then we've got the last one, of course, Texas and Xavier. Texas my father's alma mater beating cousin Jared's alma mater. We discussed that game on the show that nobody saw, and I mean that was a wild game. The and a game you kind of knew if Texas wins, they're probably in, and if they lose, they're probably out. And not to say that they, that it had to be that way because weird things could have happened, but you felt pretty good about that. And then the way that game played out, and then coming into the Tennessee game the next day, and then of course, we had talked about that with liking. Tennessee to take advantage of that, and they barely got it done for us. So this Texas story is so interesting, and then people debating right between them and North Carolina who didn't deserve it versus it seemed like West Virginia, for instance, playing a Xavier team who I don't know. I feel like I didn't hear anything about in all this. It's like they kind of feel like with all the other drama, like they've just like maybe I've just missed it, just swept under the rug. Texas Xavier, Jake, who wins?
Texas, sure. Yep.
Texas. All right, we've got them at 56 should be Xavier at 56. So very close game. That one's really, if you're talking about who's going to win, probably more of a style analysis. We'll talk.
That's Trey Johnson to me is the
There you go.
difference.
I'm gonna say we'll talk more about that one later. We'll deep dive into that one, but for the purpose of the bracket, then against Illinois in the next round, how do you see that one?
I like Illinois. Um, they're seated. They're underseeded for their talent, but they're seated correctly for the year. They went through weird illness and injuries, coming back healthy. They're a very talented team with a lot of offensive talent. They're a great coach. I really like their coach, and I think whoever wins that one, I don't think they're getting by Illinois. That is a tough team to prep for, and especially coming on short prep. I don't think that's something you want to do, whether you're Xavier or Texas. And it kind of puts Texas in the same scenario that they're going against, that they were going
Mm.
Texas A&M to Tennessee. I think they're going to be similar scenario, and then you get Illinois, and that's
Not
just
the not the
fortunate.
double overtime, but the travel,
No,
which is
yeah,
probably just as bad.
yeah, yeah.
12-5 upsets. Obviously, the big talk, always the big talk. Jake, we debated all four of them.
Mm.
Feels like a year where all four fives could win
Yeah.
or lose, and neither would surprise me. I don't think there's a 12 on the board that I look at that I'm like, man, they really botched this one. And the 12 really is like 2/3 likely to win. But I also don't see a scenario where I'm like, this 12 doesn't have a chance. And usually I think there's one that I'm like, I love this 12, and one that I'm like, I hate them, and the other two are toss ups. I think this is a year where all four of them kind of could be toss ups. We went through our logic on those. We've taken
Yeah.
two. And one of them was the one that wasn't even not even the one that's favored in that being in Colorado State. So we're taking two 12-5s. I'm going to ask you how many 12s win asterisk you can't pick two. Does one
So
12 win or does three win? You can pick 0 or 4 if you want to be bold. Folks, and by the way, I never ask Jake ahead of time. I always put him on the spot on these things. Y'all don't even know how many things I put him on the spot on, and he comes through seamlessly, like he's completely prepped for it. And I'm just making stuff up. So, y'all throw some kind words his way for always jumping up when I ask random questions like this.
Uh, if I can't pick two, I'll probably pick one.
Pick one, okay.
Yeah, I think the difference being Liberty there, and I think there's a good chance. Um, who was the other one? Who's the other one I can't think of right now? It's on the top half of the screen.
Yes. Michigan,
UC San Diego.
UC San Diego.
Like if Michigan came out hot, that's going to put a pin in that one, and it's gonna be tough for that. So then I think you still get one. You might get UC San Diego. You might get Colorado State because say that Hunter doesn't play, that puts them a little more likely to win. Or I think you get one for sure one. I'm thinking three, but if I can't pick two, I'll pick one.
And I think one is the smart answer to that. And I know you can bet on all these props out there, which is kind of I think my final point here before we wrap up part one is just, if you're looking at betting things like how many 12 seeds win, and things of that nature, you have to consider the odds, of course, but I think there might be a little bit of a market inefficiency on the 512s. I'm not sure if that exists on the 413s. I don't think it exists below that or outside of
I
it.
think 11 is the new
11
one.
could be. I was thinking that one might be one, right? Where like there's a little bit of overreaction
Well,
now.
I think it's because of the play-in, right? The play-in's coming at 11. Sometimes you're getting like this year they didn't match it up as much, but like if this would have been like a couple years ago, you have San Diego State and VCU playing, and then they get BYU. Like I think BYU would be in trouble either route that way, and so you're getting these 11 seeds beating 6 seeds because you're getting teams that get that are good enough to already be in the tournament and probably shouldn't be in the play-in, and then um, they've already got the game out of it and they've got the jitters out, so then they're playing immediately well, and BYU's still doing their first,
We've
not to be on BYU, but uh, their first tournament jitters thing.
Yeah, and we've seen that year after year with these 11 seeds. The committee likes to put an 11 seed in that probably didn't deserve it, but has the talent. We saw it that year with was it LSU? Was that year USC? I think was one year.
Yeah,
Was it Drake one year? There was one year. It was one of the mid majors. I can't remember which one that we like didn't think should make it, but we were all excited it did or something. And anyway, there's always like that 111 seed that you go like they probably didn't deserve it, but we know they've got the pieces, and then they go like they get it going and make that run. But I think with 512s, I think there might be a little bit of a market inefficiency there. We've talked so much about the 12s that my hunch is you might have a little bit of better luck backing fives than 12s. Now the problem is that going to play itself out in a betting spread? Almost assuredly not. Is it going to play itself out in the cumulative bet, how many five seeds will advance? Very possibly, because the limits on that bet are going to be completely different, and your sharps are probably not messing with it. Your big money players are probably not messing with it, because even if they thought they had an edge, the limits would be low enough that it wouldn't be worth their time anyway, or they'd be, afraid of being found out as people who've been found out and told, kindly to go away by so many sports books. And so, it's a situation where I don't know if it plays up the bracket even. It's something I've been thinking about. However it may play out, just kind of something to keep in the back of your mind. Don't go too 12 crazy, because I just don't think you're going to get. That's not to say that three can't, because they're all four can't. They can, but I think everyone else is also thinking that, and so our job is to think about market inefficiencies. I think there might be one there. So that's my last little take there. Jake, do you have any parting words specifically for people deep diving the first round games here before we move on to part two and talk about the rest of the tournament?
The deep dive in the first four is a lot of fun because these games matter so much to the small schools and like the bigger schools. Sometimes, like San Diego State, I think feels a little disrespected, and UNC might be just happy to get there. And then Texas has got like that. They don't want to be the first SEC. You don't want to be the first SEC team to lose. So you've got a little extra bit of pressure there, where Xavier's playing a little looser. I don't. There's a lot of fun angles to take through here, because then the same that could be said with Texas. Like they came through the SEC, they're more battle tested than Xavier, so it's going to be interesting and fun deep dive, worth turning in. Get those extra picks, get all the model stuff. It'll be worth being there.
Yeah, absolutely well said. And of course, Texas with potentially some coaching
Mm.
drama as well, which there's all
Yeah.
sorts of things around that of do you need to win a game to keep your job in the tournament or buy yourself another year or whatnot. So yeah, a lot of great angles. That'll wrap us here for part one. We'll be back with part two soon. And since we were talking about sports betting, we want to remind you that you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.